GT Racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going in the outside, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up to him!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
40 of the best sim racers, $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Super Cup.
Gotta love this time of year. Only one can be champion. Let's go playoff racing.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Welcome one and all to the iRacing Esports Network once again this beautiful Friday morning for us here in the Oceania region, but a very nice Thursday night for you American friends. This is the Geodesic GoPro Championship from Spa-Francorchamps. An hour and 30 minutes of multi-class GT racing coming up for you from a virtual Ardennes at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. I am Reese Gardner. And joining me in the commentary box, Bo Albert for this round. Bo, you've competed in this series before, had a few adventures at Phillip Island, but you're up here in the commentary box for this round. Are you looking forward to seeing some interesting racing?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Of course, I've witnessed this racing firsthand, and I know it's close, it's fierce, and all the drivers give a lot of respect to each other, but they also don't like to give an inch either, so it's always going to be interesting, and qualifying at the moment is proving that we probably have a pretty good race on our hands as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we only need to take a look at the battle for second place in GTLM right now. Marcus Steck and Enzo Johansson separated by less than a tenth. And Tyson Meyer and Andrew Caron separated by even less for fifth and sixth. It's quite the times that we have at Spa-Francorchamps. But we will have to take a look at the championship standings just quickly because, my goodness, it is heating up at the front of these championships. The GTLM championship, Robert Harris remains the guy at the front of the field. He's been the one who's had the most consistent form. But Tyson Meyer and Enzo Johansson are separated by only 1 point, very close behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we have to remember this series does have a drop round as well. So even though right now it does look like Rob Harris has a pretty sizable lead, which, to be fair, he does, Tyson Meyer has a DNF to his name, which means no points. With that drop round, that will be completely removed from his end score, and he'll be right in that contention for the title. So it is not over until the championship is done in round number 9. So GTLM still well and truly on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can take a look at the gaps there as we go to the GTD Championship. Now, this is incredibly close. Up at the front, John Miller versus Brian Lockwood, separated by only 5 points for the lead of the championship. Of course, Lockwood had to take a round off last round. He was competing in real life, so that's given John Miller bit of a free kick. But as you said, Bo, with the drop rounds towards the end of the season, that can change things drastically.
Yeah, it certainly can. Brian Lockwood, of course, has one of those 0-point rounds. John Miller does not. So he's got 3 seconds and 1/3. But third place at the moment, Ferris Stanley, he didn't even start at round number 1. So he still has a drop round to use as well. He's provisionally on pole for this weekend at Spa as well by a pretty sizable margin. So Ferris Stanley could be making a mid-season charge for this championship as well. So it looks good for Brian Lockwood and John Miller. But Ferris Stanley, I think he's a bit of a dark horse for this one.
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, I remember Ferris Stanley's form last round at Silverstone. He certainly showed his worth there. And we'll take a look quickly at the Gentleman's Championship as well, which is based on numbers of incident points. And this will tie in very well to the special prize for this round. We can see that John Miller currently leads on only 19 incident points over the whole season, with Rowe and Avital closer behind. Zach Plummer looking to overtake Avital for third if he has a clean race here. We do have a very special prize, this being the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. It's notorious on iRacing for being very difficult to drive a clean lap around here without getting an off-track incident point. And, of course, Geodesic are aware of this. And, of course, thanks to our sponsors, they have provided us with $50 in prize money in both classes for the least amount of incident points. Quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. So drivers have to sort of weigh up how they want to attack in the race for positions, championship points, and all of that against potentially getting some financial reward for actually racing cleanly, making sure they stay away from those white lines. So some drivers will really be playing with that. And if you are someone like Rob Harris, who has a bit of an advantage in the championship at the moment, you might see him just play it a bit safe for this round and actually try and get some of that prize money.
Yes, indeed. It's absolutely something that we could end up seeing. Meanwhile, the sun is starting to rise, and we'll go very shortly over the GTLM and GTD pole laps, because that's what we love to do here at SimSpeed, take a tour around the circuit. Meanwhile, as we just get that sorted, a race around Spa is difficult enough as it is, but the drivers will have changing light conditions to deal with, Bo, because we're starting at sunrise and going into the morning.
Absolutely, and with that comes track temperature changes as well, also visibility changes. There's a lot of factors that go into that. It's a bit like an endurance race, of course, when you first go from the daylight to the night, but in this case it's the other way around. We're going from the night, so drivers going to be having very little visibility, where you probably need the most visibility at the race start. So that's going to be very, very tricky, as this is the lap that Rob Harris managed to take pole position for the GTLM class by 0.3 of a second over Marcus Deck, fires it in to turn number 1 at La Source, second gear, and fires it out towards this beautiful run to one of the most famous corners in motorsport race.
Yep, absolutely. The Rouge Radion complex. It's not flat out in a GTE. He'll have to lift just slightly, maybe. He's keeping it nice and pinned up the hill, though. But coming down the Kemmel Straight, he's got an opportunity to rest. 6th gear as the speed continues climbing ever higher. And then we come into the twisties, Bo, because the next corner here, Lecombe, you want to ride the curb and make sure you don't cut the corner too much. Keep your line nice and clean through this right-hander and get a nice exit, because up comes Bruxelles. Downhill hairpin, and then some of the most exciting corners on this circuit.
Absolutely, you have this really slow speed section at the moment, wind back over to the right, use all of this curb on the left and really maximize this run onto the absolutely fantastic Pouon corner. You'll see here, 5th gear at the moment, goes in a 6th, just downshifts onto 1 gear, fires it in, down to 4th, mid-corner, use all that exit speed, really try and hook up to the second phase of the corner, and then straight line all the way through to Campus and Fangez corners, which is really, really fast as well. Down to 3rd gear, use all that inside curb that you can. Rob really nailing it nicely, so the Team Tortuga Porsche really set up quite nicely as he now heads into this double right-hander. Use all the curb on the outside, flip the apex, actually runs very wide. You do have to be careful. That gravel on the outside can bite you, but then we make the run to the awesome Blanchimont corner, high commitment, and this is where a lap can be made or broken.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen many an occasion where a driver has taken a little bit too much in this corner, but Harris just guiding his Porsche through there nicely, not a hint of understeer or oversteer, and then hard braking for the bus stop chicane, which doesn't really resemble a bus stop anymore, but it's still called that in real life for some reason. And that is a lap of Spa in 2 minutes and 10.8 seconds. That's a fairly good lap. Well, not just fairly good, it's the best one that everyone has done so far.
Absolutely, and to be the only one in the 210 bracket is a bit of a bragging right for him as well. Of course, getting pole by 3/10 is nice, but when you're the only one to go below a sub 211, just a bit of bragging rights for him, and he'll be enjoying that quite nicely as we're getting ready to take a look at Ferris Stanley, who I think is probably the most standout qualifying performance of the entire 26 car grid that we have here today. Class pole position race by 0.6 of a second.
Yeah, fantastic job from Ferris Stanley, just keeping up with the form that he established last round at Silverstone. Let's take a look at that lap from his perspective down into La Source. We got to remember the two classes differ in some very exceptional ways. GTLM has more downforce, a bit more power. They're able to take higher speeds through the corners, but they don't have ABS like these GTD cars do. And you see Ferris Stanley pushing very hard up the hill. These cars don't have as much aero grip as the GTLM cars do, which means they can keep up with them in a straight line, but when it comes to the corners, you got to muscle it around a little bit more.
Absolutely, and you really have to attack these GT3 cars. You have to use all the mechanical grip they have because they don't have the aerodynamic advantage the GTLM cars do. So for Ferris Stanley in the GTD, using all of the road, really trying to maximize mid-corner speed in the GT3s, because if you scrub that speed off, it's really hard to build that momentum up again, especially in the Audi, where it is so twitchy, and if you get it just slightly wrong, it can compromise you a long way down the road. You see there a nice little run there out of no-name corner, and makes the run to pool, and of course we saw the GTLM lap of Rob Harris taken fourth here. I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit slower for Ferris Stanley. The aero actually ran a little bit wide on entrance there, but did hook it up quite nicely for the second phase. So he's got that working pretty well in the Audi R8 at the moment. Then into Camps and Fungyas, a very fast section down to third gear. So you're just building the revs, just holds it in third. I know some do like to short shift in the fourth, but he's got it figured out in third. So he's very comfortable in the car, is what I'm noticing in this lap at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And out of Stavilo, he's looking very controlled, and the Audi does like it at Spa. Very smooth track with a lot of fast corners, but you've got to be careful with your throttle application and braking in a straight line, because this car can bite you if you even overstep the limit slightly. Through Blanchimont, he looks reasonably controlled, but I know from driving in the 24 hours, it's a thrill ride in these GT3 cars. And down into the bus stop, a very clean lap from Ferris Stanley, and what a fast one as well.
Exactly. To beat someone like Brian Lockwood by that kind of a margin just says it all about Ferris Stanley. And the Audi is a big fan of Spa, absolutely, but it's not 0.6 of a second faster. So that is down to Ferris Stanley just absolutely nailing his lap. And it's very, very good for him to get that result in qualifying. But we have seen how twitchy those Audis can be, especially at Blanchimont. So over an hour and a half of racing, perhaps he has to just play it a little bit more careful and not push that Audi as hard as he did in qualifying.
Yeah, he'll certainly want a shot at that $50 prize money brought to us by Turn Racing Sim Wheels. Of course, they're the ones donating the $50 per class to who gets the least amount of incident points in this round. So thanks very much for your support, guys. And thank you, of course, to all of our sponsors for helping put this series together. It's a big prize that these guys are competing for per class. They win a GoPro Hero 7 Black Edition plus an action kit. That's the main prize for winning this series. There's all sorts of goodies to be won through the season as well.
Absolutely, and it's a great initiative that Geodesic and all of their partners have really come together and provide this championship with a bit of an extra spice. It's not just that end of season prize, which would be absolutely incredible, and I'm a little sad that I'm already out of contention for it, but also every single race having, that prize money from different partners who we're so grateful to have on board that actually have different reasons on how to win it. Of course, in the first two rounds, we saw that in order to win it, you had to actually win your class. Whereas for this race now, they've mixed it up and gone lowest incidence. That's how you get this prize money. So the championship is constantly changing, constantly evolving. And if the drivers want to walk away getting every opportunity of getting that prize money, they've really got to be adaptable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take a look at exactly who is going to be competing today. Robert Harris and Marcus Deck on row 1 there, with Enzo Johansson and William Whalen behind them on row 2. Tyson Meyer and Andrew Caron, plus Trevor Clement and Graham Quinn, of course, race engineer for Scott Speed and American Rallycross. Coming through the rest of the GT LM field, Justin Rem and Simon Avatal completing our 10-car field, Bo, and then we go on to the GTDs.
Absolutely, and it was Ferris Stanley who set an absolutely fantastic time to get that pole position in class. Brian Lockwood, though, is no stranger to the front of a grid, and he starts in second. Gabriel Ferreira and Zach Plummer are row number 3 in your GTD field, with John Miller, Jasper Drilica, Victor Tanaka, and Hayden Gober, your top 8 in class, with Dan King and Jack Anderdeck being your top 10 in class.
Yes, indeed. And the GTD field rounded out by Alder Stepanovsky, David Browning, Mark File, John Navarra, the last driver to set a time. We've also got Eric Luke and Andrew Taylor in the server, but we are unsure if they will be taking the start. Well, the qualifying session is just ending now. We've got a 2-minute timer before it ticks over to the race session. Let's take a look at the conditions out there on track. You can see that the sun is rising. It was a very dark qualifying session early in the morning. Now, we're taking a look at very reasonable wind and very low temperatures out there on track. Also very dry in terms of humidity.
Absolutely, and that's going to make things a little bit interesting, having that big amount of humidity, because it will make the car a little bit slidier, but they are probably saved a bit by the track temperature being as low as it is, 18 degrees. But of course, with the sun coming up, that temperature is only going to rise throughout this hour-and-a-half race, and could get a little bit slippy towards the end of the race. So drivers will have had to have factored that in with their car setups, just the changing conditions throughout this race and where you want your car to be strong. You want to go for that setup that's really good at the start of the race and try and build that margin at the start, or do you want a car that's good when the points count?
Exactly right. That's the dilemma that these drivers face. Well, it's going to be a 1 hour and 30-minute race. Here are the stats of the track. Nearly 7 kilometers long, this circuit, so there's an awful lot of track to enjoy around a place like this. But the 90-minute race format, Bo, that really throws up a bit of a strategy challenge for the drivers, in both classes, in fact, because the GTLMs, they can almost make it an hour on fuel. The GTDs, they can make it just over an hour on fuel. So there's a lot of room to play with your strategy.
Yeah, there is, and I think that's a really cool thing about this series as well. Add in the fact that, of course, we do have live race control monitoring this race as well. So if there is a safety car, that throws the strategy completely out of the book. So it's very hard to actually go into this race with a set game plan of, okay, I'm going to pit on this lap and execute from there. It's constantly changing this race. And that's what I think is one of the cool things. Of course, you have to factor in fuel saving, how you look after your tires. And as I mentioned, if a safety car comes in as well. So half an hour of wriggle room in both classes when it comes to fuel. And it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers try and split that up to get to the finish line first.
Yes, indeed. And it'll be interesting to see who does what in what section of the track as a result, because Spa, you can divide it into 3 separate sections, more or less. You got the run from La Source to Le Combe, that long straight section that includes the famous Radione Rouge, and then you got the twisting middle sector, the likes of Pouon, Fagné, Stavolo, and then you've got the long run to the finish along the back stretch through Blanchimont and through the bus stop. And different cars will be strong in different sections. You got a car for straight line, well, it'll be stronger in 2 out of the 3. You got a downforce car, then you will absolutely monster them in the middle sector, but you'll be a sitting duck on these sections of the track on the straights.
Absolutely, and there are a lot of straights here at Spa-Francorchamps. You've got the Camel Straight, and even though it's not too much of a straight, you've also got the run through Blanchimont and a big braking zone into the bus stop. So It's all about compromise, like you said, and these drivers had to have thought about that, especially with their starting position. Do they need to be passing cars or do they need to be defending from cars? There's a lot for these drivers to decide in this final 50 seconds before the race goes green, but it looks like most of the drivers are now on the grid, so decisions are locked in stone, and it's all going to be about how they can execute on this very tricky race start.
Absolutely, and a very tricky race start it will be. We're using the Grand Prix pits for this one, so we'll be taking the green flag out of the bus stop chicane. It's interesting how Spa works sometimes. Of course, the 24-hour race using the endurance pits, the safety car pulls in on the Grand Prix start-finish straight, but you don't actually get the green flag until you're out of the hairpin. No such confusion here. The drivers will be ready to go right from the start.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting because that means the first corner will be La Source, which is already an overtaking opportunity as the cars get rolling. So if some drivers are feeling brave, there's already an opportunity right from the get-go. But they do have to sort themselves out very quickly because Rouge is right behind that corner. And you don't want to go side by side through there. Even if we have seen in some real-world series, drivers try and take it 3 wide. It's not recommended in sim racing, especially when you have 90 minutes of racing. It's all about just settling in, getting into your rhythm, and finding out how you can get to that checkered flag.
It's a beautifully awkward split between endurance and sprint racing in this series. It really ramps up the challenge for the drivers. Well, coming through the bus stop, the safety car will pull in and Harris will be taking control of the GTLM start. He is instantly away out of the bus stop chicane as the green flag flies. He's got a fantastic lead there over Marcus Deck, and Enzo Johansson already starting to pressure him into turn 1. Try and round the outside at La Source. It can work, but not so at this stage. So there's your GTLM field. Let's have a look at the GTD field then. Ferris Stanley and Brian Lockwood with a fantastic gap already over their competitors. Gabriel Ferreira battling with Zach Plummer, Stanley's teammate.
Yeah, and Zach Plummer was getting very fast on that race start there. Wanted to make an advantage. Couldn't quite do it though, and I'm very impressed so far. It's all single file, but in your GTLMs, it is really not, as it is side by side. Marcus Deck thinks about the outside on Robert L. Harris. Can he do it? He commits into Lecombe, and he's gonna get the advantage as well, but he's still got an overlap. Can Rob Harris fire it up the inside? Still trying, almost knocking door mirrors off of each other. It's on for second and third as well. It's all going on at the head of GTLM around the outside. That is a brilliant move. If he can hold it, he's doing everything he can. And Marcus Deck with potentially a great pass can't complete it. Rob Harris fires it around the outside, side by side into Puon. Tyson Meyer trying to make something happen here as well, as Rob Harris now has the outside the long way. He's going to go all the way out to the AstroTurf. And that's an incident already as Marcus Deck holds the inside, heading in towards Campus and Fungi. As you can see, Enzo Johansson trying to buy into this as well. Tyson Meyer looking up the inside, but it's still on for your class lead. This is incredible stuff. But Marcus Deck, he tried for so long. He tried for half a lap. He's got the job done, Reese.
Yeah, not a moment too soon either. They were side by side for about half a lap there. That's crazy. But the GTLM field, obviously very close, and competition is going to ramp up. Harris in the slipstream now of Deck. You won't want to make a move through Blanchimont. You have to wait for the bus stop to do something like that, but you can tell that Harris is already planning to take that race lead back. But Marcus Deck having a really good run right now. He's one of the more troubled competitors in this field, but it'll be good for him to be at the front of the field. Have a look at Johansson trying to take advantage of this battle, and Meyer as well. Have a look at Quinn trying to go up the inside of Caron. They make contact. Bit of history between those guys, because Silverstone didn't exactly end well for both of those guys either.
No, not at all. So a bit of a bad blood between the two potentially, but they sorted out this time, which is good to see, especially when you come to Rouge. Haven't seen anyone go side by side through here yet, which is great to see, but for your GTDs, Ferris Stanley already got a brilliant lead already in class over Brian Lockwood after those two managed to jump away pretty early. So those two definitely look like the favourites for this race, but just look at Enzo Johansson. Rob Harris was on pole, promoted to second. He has to watch out for third place as well at the moment, but that BMW doesn't quite have the speed, especially with the slipstream enabled Rob Harris. Wants to go around the outside, can't quite do it, almost contact, and Tyson Meyer wants to buy into this as well.
He absolutely wants to buy into it. You see Tyson really in the mix at most of these events, and William Whalen right behind them, hanging onto the back of this train too. It's all on at the front of the field in GTLM. Meanwhile, in GTD, have a look at this battle for third place. Incredible stuff here, because we've got Lockwood far ahead, but then Pereira, Plummer, Dralica, Miller, and Tanaka all in the same bit of racetrack. And of course, there's been a bit of a team change as well that we'll get to very shortly as we take a look once again at our GTLM field going through the beautiful Fanye fast chicane. Going, they're equalizing out a bit through the slower sections of the circuit at the moment, but when it comes to those exits, when it comes to the straights, oh dear, that's a problem.
Victor Tanaka is not facing the right way at all, and that was that battle we were watching, and it's the two teammates getting into each other of all things.
No.
And they've actually both made contact with the wall. You can see that Tanaka does eventually go into the wall as there, but his teammate as well clips it. And you have to say a very, very dangerous moment for a few of our GTDs as the driver almost rolled back onto the circuit. But for Racecraft Esports, that is a nightmare on just the third lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Racecraft actually newly formed with drivers in this championship. Pereira, Lockwood, Tanaka, and another driver whose name escapes me all joined together. Let's have a look at what happened to Trevor Clement in P10 in GTLM, and interesting section of the track. This is where things can really kick off. What happened to him under brakes? Oh, we got a bit of help.
Yeah, got a bit of help there, and I'm not sure how the stewards will look on that about Graham Quinn, just very late on the brakes, but it is on for our race lead. Rob Harris trying to get the lead back, so late on the brakes into Lacombe. Almost runs off the circuit, almost contact with Marcus Deck as well. And Marcus Deck gets demoted all the way down to second, has to fight off Enzo Johansson as well. And this is on at the moment. Enzo Johansson trying to steal second, but has to go the long way around the outside. That's what Marcus Deck did to Robert Harris on the first lap. Can Enzo do it to Marcus? He cannot, runs out of real estate. But Rob Harris resumes the race lead at the moment. We've got a replay up on screen. And you can see Rob Harris there trying to break away as Enzo Johansson trying to force the issue. Victor Puon, that's a risky move, and he's just about made it. But the Porsche will have the inside line into the next sequence. The corner's almost contact.
My goodness.
Way too close for just the first 8 minutes of the race, and Marcus Deck will get that position. But I've got to say, they've probably got to sort themselves out because Robert Harris, within just a matter of corners, 1.4 seconds up the road.
And this is story of the season for Robert Harris. He's been able to take advantage of other drivers squabbling and take some very easy lead gaps as a result. That's made things a bit cruisy for him up at the front. Of course, not to say he isn't working hard to be that quick, but these guys battling is certainly helping him out at the front here. Let's see what Tyson Meyer can do versus Enzo Johansson. Of course, Meyer, winner of the race at Road America, and placing well at Silverstone too. Not much he can do into the bus stop thus far. We'll have to take a look at Johansson coming up the Kemmel Straight, because that seems to be where the move is most decisive.
Absolutely, you can see there he's going for a slightly different run out of La Source, almost into the rear quarter panel on the exit there. And what he's actually done is actually just made himself quite slow against Tyson Meyer, who was very, very close, but Tyson just lifting off a bit, didn't want to go side by side, and well, absolutely can't blame him. But you can see Enzo very close to the back now, but almost too close. He's almost hurt his run, and Tyson now thinks about the outside down this long straight through that only small little kink there, and now it's all straight line from here. And what can Tyson do on the brakes into Lacombe? Well, it's all about what Enzo Johansson can do as well, as Tyson switches lanes as well. Enzo not able to do anything this time around, and contact between himself and Marcus Deck. You can see this getting a little bit ugly pretty soon, Reese.
Yeah, these guys are really starting to trip over each other now. Second all the way back to 6th place in this one bit of racetrack, and Robert Harris is just skipping away. Let's have a look for 4th and 5th, meanwhile, in GTLM. Zach Plummer and Gabriel Ferreira side by side through Lacombe, and Ferreira taking advantage of the excellent traction of the Mercedes, instantly defensive versus Pereira, and Jesper Dralica trying to make himself a part of this as well. This is fantastic. 2 Mercedes versus 1 Audi. Awesome stuff.
Absolutely. No, that was very feisty stuff there by the Audi of Zach Plummer. He's really trying at the moment and was playing very dicey on the run into the long right-hander. So for Zach, he's got to try and make a move, stick on the Mercedes, but he has to be careful, of course, because Jesper is just lurking in the background. At any opportunity could make a move happen, and well, he got a bit late on the brakes there into Campus Corner, but not able to do anything with it. So we know how good the Mercedes is, so we could have a great run into the bus stop chicane. If something does go wrong on the exit for Zach Plummer, if he just gets a little snap of oversteer, Jesper Jorlicka could definitely find an opportunity, but it's all nice and settled for Zach. Can he do anything on the back of Gabriel Ferreira? The answer is no, as our GTLM leaders come across to start yet another lap.
Yeah, they certainly do. Apologies for the little bit of slow motion audio we're hearing from Bo at the moment. There's slight technical issues going on in your part of the world, Bo, but it's good to see that you're getting back up and running very soon. This battle is continuing in GTLM, but in GTLM rather. My goodness, side by side through Radion, as we predicted, and this is going to leave the door right open for William Whalen. My goodness, look at Whalen round the outside. Oh, there we go. There's contact right in the middle of the straight. The cars are blocking the track. This is not what we wanted to see.
Oh no, that's a massive crash there. And well, William Whalen just getting back onto the track now, but you can see there, that's just a huge shunt. And in fact, they're quite lucky to actually have Enzo Johansson back to the pits now. But let's get a replay up on screen. And a safety car has been deployed. So the field has been frozen, so you're not going to miss anything as we dissect these replays. But side by side through Arouge, so risky. Marcus Deck just hangs it around the outside the long way. You can see there the Porsche in the background just getting a massive run, and it all gets a little bit messy. 3 into 1, and Enzo just moving a little on the straight and just gets into the 2 on his left.
Yeah, it looks to me like Maya moved a little bit to the right as well. So unfortunately at those speeds going into the rear quarter of a car, that's only ever going to result in a spin. Andrew Caron escaped with a very narrow margin there, so that's a real shame. 3 cars taken out of contention for this race all at once. Let's have a look from Maya's point of view.
Absolutely, you can see there, it's all just getting very close at the moment. You don't see the Porsche at the moment, and they just meet in the middle, and that's a brutal hit there for Enzo Johansson. And Tyson actually very lucky in the end to get out of that with as little damage as he did, but the other 2 not quite so lucky. So 2 very quick GTLM cars. Well, one of them is in the fence and unofficially out of the race, and William Whalen still has the potential to get back in this race, but damage to his car. But for now, the field is frozen, and this will most definitely alter the team's strategies.
Absolutely. The safety car is now out onto the circuit, picking up our race leader, Robert Harris. And now this is an opportunity for the drivers to save a bit of fuel after those crazy first few laps. And this goes to show you, I'm always surprised by lap counts at Spa-Francorchamps because it's over so quickly in my mind. I often forget it's 7 kilometers long. Our leader is only on lap 6.
It's an incredibly long circuit, but it does feel quite short when you're driving because it's so busy. There's so many corners, so much to do throughout the lap, so it can get very, very busy in the driver's seat. But yeah, the laps do tick by relatively slowly, but we are expecting, well, this will be thrown out with the safety car now being out, but we were expecting a roughly 41 lap race, so just shy of a Grand Prix distance actually, which just shows just how fast these GTLM cars can be. But we're probably looking closer to around the 38 lap margin now with this safety car. But it does bunch the field up, which does give the drivers like Marcus Deck, who showed they could race with Rob Harris, another shot to try and get up past him.
Exactly. This is a lifeline for drivers like Marcus Deck. Of course, Deck, we have to say he is running exceptionally well here at the moment. He's not been the luckiest driver in most of this season. He's had a fair few retirements and quite a few on-track incidents that have harmed his championship challenge, but it's good to see him up here in second place and showing Rob Harris what he can really do.
Yeah, well, he's flashing his headlights, so he's already got my vote, but I mean, to be up the front, like in a series where he hasn't regularly been up the front, you know, it's a big deal for Marcus, and he's going to be really trying to capitalize on it and get that big result. So if he can end up with another podium in this series, that would be fantastic news for him. But there's still a long way to go. We're only 16 minutes into this race. So for Marcus, it's all about just keeping a cool head at the moment, making sure you hit your marks and execute towards the end of the race. Because Rob Harris, you know, he's a driver that knows how to put pressure on other drivers. So it's not over just yet for any of these drivers to make their way back to the top.
Absolutely not. Meanwhile, in the GTLM field, Ferris Stanley still maintaining his lead from Brian Lockwood. And for drivers like Pereira, Dralica, and Plummer, they have another chance as well, because remember, Lockwood and Stanley left them right behind on the initial start.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a lifeline for them as well. So we'll see how those GTD cars can work together to maybe stay with Ferris Stanley and Brian Lockwood. But Ferris Stanley, he had an almost 8-second margin when that safety car came out. So he's really been hurt by this, probably more so than Rob Harris in your GTLM lead. So for Ferris, he's got to do it all over again. And I'm just looking at his lap times that he was running at the moment, consistently in the 2:14s, which is pretty incredible when you look at Brian Lockwood, who hasn't done a single 2:14.
Absolutely, that's quite the interesting comparison there. News from Race Control, of course. The Geodesic GoPro Championship has live race control, and the incident that we saw that brought out the safety car has been deemed a racing incident. No further action taken.
I mean, you know, I think it's a good call. It's very hard to, you know, judge in the heat of the moment. I actually almost expected it to go to a post-race review personally, but, you know, the stewards have made some very good calls this season, so I'm going to trust them on that. And, you know, at least for Tyson Meyer, at least he's able to just continue on with his race, knowing that wherever he crosses the finish line at the end of this race, that will be where he finishes. He doesn't have any penalties hanging over his head or anything like that. So it's beneficial for all the drivers. They can just crack on with their job and put on a good show.
Absolutely, and a good show it has been over this season of racing so far. You know, from my perspective as a broadcaster coming into this series, I've said this before, it was as a Dralica actually coming into the pits, taking an early gamble here. He's probably going to try and reverse engineer this race, save a little bit of extra fuel, and John Miller following him in.
I personally think this is a very good call. I know from experience it worked quite nicely for me at Phillip Island. Just being able to get that fuel in the tank early, just top it up, so that when you have to take your pit stop later in the race, it's actually much shorter compared to your rivals. And of course, you're not really losing much in the safety car at the moment, especially if you are towards the back of the field. And actually quite a few drivers that were towards the back of the field have dived in. Victor Tanaka, who we saw involved in that earlier incident at Puwon, he's dived into the pits as well to get some damage done, just get fuel in, and it can really play into your hands towards the end of the race. So look for those three drivers to really make some moves come the end of the race. But Jesper Dralica, with the shortest pit stop by far of the ones that have actually dived in, so he hasn't taken tyres. I'm thinking John Miller and Victor Tanaka, they will be, and you might as well, because it is a free stop.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't end up losing a ton in terms of time. It's just track position that you need to worry about when you take an early gamble like this. But those drivers have proven themselves very capable of making their way through fields. We should see some interesting viewing from those guys' perspectives later on. But it is interesting, the tyre situation, because the tyres on these GT cars, they are a bit more heavy in terms of wear than they used to be, but you can still push them for very long distances.
Yeah, absolutely. You've seen plenty of times where the drivers will actually, you know, endurance races go for a double stint in these, or a bit longer as well. Some even tripling or even quad stints if we're somewhere like Circuit de la Save. But the tyres can cop a fair bit of punishment, but at the end of the day, new tyres are new tyres. So if you can get new boots on the car, if you have the opportunity, you will be able to gain an advantage from it, because during the end of, well, towards the end of a stint, I should say, the grip will definitely fall off for all of these drivers. And the cars, especially the mid-engine cars like the Ferrari 488, we don't have any Ford GTs in the field today, unfortunately, but that car as well, towards the end of the stint on old tyres, they get very unstable. So someone like Tyson Meyer in the Ferrari, Graham Quinn just to name a couple in the field. Look out for those guys towards the end of the race, maybe to just be a bit more conservative.
Yeah, exactly. We should expect that. And in front-engined cars, well, in the front-engine car in GTLM, the BMW, you'll obviously see drivers making a little more use of their fronts because the BMW's got a big whopping twin-turbo V8 over that big boy front axle.
Absolutely, it's a very, it feels like a heavy car as well. It's actually a very similar weight to the Porsche, Ferrari, and the Ford, but it does feel very heavy. The way it uses its tires feels quite aggressive as well. So it is one of those cars you have to drive it a bit differently, especially if you are trying to conserve tires. And you know, there's only so much you can do as setup. Reduce the cambers, reduce the toe, even the spring rates, and anti-roll bars as well, just to nurse those front tires. But apart from that, unfortunately, in a front-engine car, you're always going to be losing that grip. And, well, for the front of the field, Marcus Deck is flashing his lights, but the safety car is not.
Yes, indeed. Safety car will come in now as soon as they make their way through the bus stop chicane. And then we'll be able to see what this period of lull in the race has done to the drivers' psyches. What are they going to do? What's going to eventuate over the next few laps as they sort themselves back out? We do have a few drivers out of position, remember, particularly in the GTD class. We'll have to keep an eye on them. The pace car is pulling away into the pits. Once again, Robert Harris has control of the field. A single file start, and he goes right at the apex. Marcus Deck right on it. He's staying with him.
Absolutely, which means it's going to get very spicy down the Camel Straight where lots of positions can be made. And we're seeing a lot of shuffling around in your GTDs as well as they get the restart. Actually, a few drivers side by side in the bus stop as well, and almost contact. But yeah, Brian Lockwood getting very racy. Look at him. He knows how quick Ferris Stanley is. He knows he has to make sure he goes with him, or at least gets the pass done early, and he can't do it at the moment.
Oh, he's got to run.
I've got a feeling he's going to go for it here. Side by side, it's Irish, potentially just ducks back in though. Not willing to commit just yet. So he's just waiting for it. But go back to your GTLMs because look how close it is down the Camel Straight. Marcus Deck, he's done it once. Can he do it twice? The answer is no. It's very late on the brakes open. He might be about to prove me wrong with a sensational run through the right-hander. Has to get tight through the left-hander and can't hold through the right and almost pushed off the road there by your race leader, Rob Harris. So how will that one be viewed? It was very close racing, and Brian Lockwood is your new race leader in GTD. So Ferris Stanley, we've seen how quick he is, but now he has all the hard work to pass more cars as John Navarro goes sailing down the order as well. The Geodesic car with big damage as well.
Yes, indeed. Building optimization systems replay here of the move for the lead in GTD. Brian Lockwood with a great run down the straight. And of course, holding the outside through Lecombe. It's so easy to go side by side through these turns, and he managed to get that position done very nicely. Meanwhile, further back in the field, John Navarra for Geodesic Racing having a bit of an adventure and an appointment with the wall.
Yeah, unfortunately, that appointment with the wall was not great news for him, and he's going to be leaving the doctor's appointment feeling pretty sad about that one. As is Ferris Stanley, I think, going to be feeling a little bit sad because that was not a good restart by him. He, you know, normally on the restarts, if you're the leader, you've got that advantage. He wasn't able to capitalize on it and now has to do all the hard work against Brian Lockwood. He's close through Blanchimont, but has no chance of making anything happen into the bus stop. Graham Quinn, on the other hand, most definitely has a chance into the bus stop, but has to go very tight through this left-hander. Space is given between the two, but they're just allowing Rob Harris again to skip away out the front of your race lead. But it's very, very close up the front. We'll see if any moves can happen into La Source. You can see still trying around the outside at La Source, and a big accordion effect there as the cars jump on the brakes.
Absolutely, and you know what? This is all helping Robert Harris. Once again, it's a repeat of the initial start. Drivers squabbling behind him, and he is just skipping away in the lead.
Yes, indeed. So Rob Harris already out to a 1.1 second lead, and it's only going to get bigger because we already know they're going to be fighting down the Kenmore Straight. It's already started as Graham Quinn to the inside instantly pops back across the nose. That was very little respect there, but gets the job done. And how is Marcus Deck on the brakes? That was beautiful touch and feel on that brake pedal of his. So he's absolutely nailed that one back into third place, which is great news for him. So he's already on his recovery drive after that incident with car number 1, Robert Harris, sorry. And we have had a steward's inquiry, and there's no further action on that. So it's still a race on for Rob Harris out front. Marcus Deck, well, he's still got 1 car to pass, and it's a very fast Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great move from Marcus Deck. But now he has got Graham Quinn in his sights. Andrew Caron looking to follow him through, and Caron, well, he's had an interesting season, ups and downs so far in the first few rounds of this season. He'll be looking to make good on a lot of the promise that he showed at places like Road America.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those drivers we know has potential. We know he can get very good results, but unfortunately this season it's just not quite happened for him. So we'll see what he can do. And at the moment, Graham Quinn running a very strong 2nd place currently, but I have to say Marcus Deck does look a little bit quicker, which is surprising because the Porsche normally struggles a little bit here at Spa-Francorchamps with the long straights. The Ferrari, of course, very used to the high-speed stuff, but Graham Quinn doing a good job. And Marcus Deck, how good is he on the... Gets a move done into the bus stop. Can't quite do it, though, so has to wait another day. But we were briefly looking at your GTD cup in there, and Brian Lockwood, well, he can't be feeling too safe with that Audi just bearing down.
Yeah, absolutely. Ferris Stanley is not leaving him alone, and obviously, Stanley, the pole sitter in the class, it would stand to reason he is the best on 1-lap pace, so Lockwood in a little bit of trouble here. This is the most pressure I've seen Lockwood under since the first half of Phillip Island back a few weeks ago. Oh, have a look at this, a move further back in the GTLM field. Victor Tanaka versus David Browning, and that looks like a fairly easy move done. Meanwhile, Maya, side by side with Caron, into Lacombe. They managed to sort themselves out just before turn-in.
Absolutely, but I'm still keeping an eye at the moment on Ferris Stanley because he's getting very close into Lacombe, but he's not close enough. You can't even see him in the camera shot. He is so tucked underneath the rear wing of that Mercedes AMG, just pressuring at the moment as Tyson Meyer makes a move happen at the moment on Andrew Caron, but Caron just fires it back and gets that position back. But you can see there he's got to go instantly defensive, and well, that's very defensive, right to the white line at the start of that straight as Tyson Meyer goes around the outside as easy as you like. And that is what pure confidence in your machinery looks like.
Absolutely, especially through a corner like Pouon. It's downhill, it's very fast. The car just wants to snap on you on some occasions. So good car control from Meyer to get that done. But this battle all the way back down into 8th place now for GTLM honours. We've got a few more drivers joining the party, like Simon Avatal, like Trevor Clement, like Justin Rem, keeping them company very nicely. And the battle for GTD still going as hot as ever.
Absolutely, and you can see the real strengths and disadvantages of the GTD cars here, with that Mercedes having so much straight line speed, but just how good is that Audi through the middle sector where it's able to really use that mid-engine layout, which helps with the 50-50 weight distribution, just gets it into that corner and really rotating very nicely. This is the only corner where it's probably got too much rotation and can be very sketchy in that Audi, but Ferris Stanley not able to do anything at the moment. But you can see he's got a lot of confidence in the brakes. I'm wondering just how long until he tries to have a crack at Brian Lockwood, but he has to make a stick because Gabriel Ferreira is just in the background as well. He's not letting these guys go, and on this last lap was actually matching their lap times very well. A 15.0 for Brian Lockwood, a 15.2 and a 15.3 for Stanley and Ferreira respectively.
Yeah, these guys are very close all through the field. Shows you just how competitive this series has been and still is. A little bit of light flashing there in GTLM as we take a look at an interesting fight going on side by side. Justin Rem versus Trevor Clement into Lacombe, and once again showing that you can go side by side through there and maintain position. Fantastic runs there, but Justin Rem, you can see just behind them, he is looking to take advantage of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin having to get a little bit defensive there against the drive behind of Simon Avatal, and you can see he's really racing at the moment. You can see how aggressive he was trying to get. Couldn't do anything with it though, so another one of our Porsches, and that's a Porsche off the road, and it's all gone a little bit wrong for William Whalen, of course the satellite racing driver, and we're just seeing what's happened here. And he's already got a lot of damage from that earlier incident, so I wonder if it's just the lasting effect of that. And nothing happening so much through Lacombe. We'll see what happens into this next corner where he will just go a little bit too hot, slide the car out, and with the damage to his car, I think that just might be a case of saying it's a day.
Yeah, a few marbles on the outside there as well, which wouldn't have helped his grip. Shame for William Whalen. He's shown himself to be one of those guys with the most potential in GTLM. C'est la vie. Meanwhile, the battle for the lead in GTD. Ferris Stanley still not letting up on Brian Lockwood at all. Love these battles for the lead. It's fantastic to see. Field is spacing out behind them, but these guys are both battling for the same kinds of honors.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it great to see two different cars as well, the strengths and weaknesses, two different drivers who are both competing for the championship, and also having to see Brian Lockwood go defensive. That's something we haven't seen too much of this season, but he has to get very defensive at the moment. Ferris Stanley probably just a bit of a wrong line through there, gives Brian Lockwood a bit of breathing room, but Graham Quinn unfortunately does not have any kind of breathing room because Marcus Deck is in that very quick Porsche with a beautiful run out of Radion, and it's going to be on down the Camel Straight and into Lacombe
Look
as
at the
well.
run!
Pulls out of the slipstream, and what can he do under brakes? We've seen how good he can be, and it's another case of the Marcus Deck show on the brakes. Job done. I have no idea how that man is so good on the brakes. That is absolutely phenomenal.
He's got it really sorted out, hasn't he, as Marcus? Fantastic move, and showing that Spa is one of those tracks that treats him very well. Meanwhile, Rem and Clement trying to put on their own little show through Brazil, and Clement not able to hold on because have a look at Rem. Great run, and following him through Avatal. Oh, could this be side by side into Pouon, just leaving a little bit of space on the inside there for Rem, going side by side. And yeah, sorry, I'm getting them confused again. That's Avatal we're looking at.
Yeah, but it's very close, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic stuff. What can he do under brakes into this next corner? And he just fires it up, but he can't quite do it. So Clement has that position. Justin Rem gonna have to sit behind at the moment, but he's just looking every which way, trying to find a way past the Alliance Racing driver. So not happening at the moment. And this is just allowing Simon Avatal with that absolutely fantastic move through the last few corners just to break away a little bit, but still well and truly on in all of our fields. As Tyson Meyer there just buying into this battle a little bit more with Graham Quinn just ahead. So GTLM had spread out. It's starting to condense back again.
Absolutely is, and proper three-car battle here. Marcus Deck, Graham Quinn, and Tyson Meyer. A little bit of an update on the object of $50 prize money this round. Currently leading out of the running drivers on incident points is Hayden Gober. He only has 7 incidents, but the others are very close. Mark File on 8 incidents, and then we've got Avatal, Taylor, and Whalen on 10 incidents. Myers just racked one more up. He's at 11.
Yeah, it can be so easy to get incident points around this circuit, so I'm not surprised there are a few drivers. And Dan King, that is not the best way to take the bus stop chicane. So let's get a building optimization systems replay, and that was a big hit into the wall. You'll see on replay now, and that'll just stem from being under pressure from the car behind, which was John Miller, and just a little bit of a snap there. You can see John putting on all kinds of pressure, switch back, and then for Dan King just gets onto the grass, and hello concrete, I'm gonna give you a kiss.
A little bit more than a kiss, unfortunately, for Dan King. He has not had a good run in this race. Meanwhile, the battle for second still going on in GTLM. These guys actually went side by side through Lacombe while we were taking a look at that replay of Dan King, but the positions have not changed. Marcus Deck holding his own at the front of this little miniature pack, but really interested to see what Graham Quinn can do. Of course, Quinn has become a bit of a figure in the forums. Of course, he works as a race engineer in real life for some very high-profile teams in American racing. So he's dropped some car physics truth bombs quite a bit on the forums, educating us sim racers on what racing is really like.
Well, that's one of the beautiful things about iRacing as well, isn't it? Is that it does have a community aspect to it. And there's a lot of people you can learn off of, and everyone's willing to share information to a degree. And, you know, it really helps the community as a whole really get stronger and get some really nice racing between all of these guys, because everyone is able to maximize their potential, maximize their machinery, and for Tyson Meyer, maximize the pit entry, because we have one of our first pit stops of the GTLM field who have not taken under safety car, and that is a reverse engineering of a race if ever I've seen one.
Absolutely, going rather early with under an hour to go, so we can expect Meyer to go all the way to the end on this one. He'll be looking for some clear air, some track position to, well, not really track position. Actually, yeah, track position in the opposite way. He's behind everyone, so he has more space to set fast times. That makes sense, right?
It does, apart from the fact he is coming out right in the thick of the GTD field.
Oh dear.
That is not helpful in the slightest. So for Tyson Meyer, this strategy could work out quite nicely, but he's got to get the timing, he's got to get the passes on all of these cars done very nicely. As Justin Red still involved in a scrap, as Trevor Clement has to go defensive and had to really get punchy through the com, and he continues to hold on to that spot. But that looked like an absolutely fantastic scrap through there.
Absolutely. These guys have not left each other alone for the entire race since the safety car came in. Let's have a look at what happened. Rem with a really good run down the Kemmel straight, but have a look there at Clement holding the outside. It's one of the best places to do it on this track, and he got the traction down, was able to maintain the position.
Yep, that's a textbook move through Lacombe. And he's got to be pretty happy with that. The only thing he's not happy about is still 55 minutes for him to hold off Justin Rem for this 7th spot at the moment. So effective 6th at the moment, of course, with that pit stop for Tyson Meyer. But the Ferrari looking very good at the moment and able to hold on to that spot. But Jack Anderdeck at the moment not having so much luck breaking away from Hayden Gober, who you did say was leading the incident points race at the moment. So he's leading that. But if he's going to get involved in a battle, the risks of getting incidents only goes up.
It absolutely does, and if you're involved in a battle like this with Jack Anderek, well, certainly going to be an interesting one for Hayden. But, oh, there we go. He's actually now tied with Mark File for the incident point lead. They're currently both on 9.
Well, there you go. It's chopping and changing at the moment. And you can see in the background, Tyson Meyer was actually about to get involved in this battle as well, as he's making his way through the GTD cars. So this is more things to watch out for. And you can just see the braking performance of the GTLM versus the GTD. And we'll go on board with Tyson Meyer here and really get an appreciation of the speed difference between all of these cars. And you'll see just how close he is, as Graham Quinn is side by side with Marcus Deck. But Deck just flawless on the brakes once again. No way past. So for Graham Quinn, he's really trying to make this move stick, and his pace is there, matching Marcus Deck very, very closely over the last lap. Just can't find a way through, though. But more importantly, they have managed to drop Andrew Caron behind, so it's down to a 2-car scrap as Tyson Meyer gets very aggressive getting past traffic.
Yeah, and I think the GTD is going to have, well, actually, that's Gober there, almost getting a slowdown, I would imagine. As he comes under pressure now from Jesper Drilica. Drilica's had quite a few adventures in this one as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly has. He hasn't had the quietest of races so far, but his car is still clean. Always kept the car on the road and keeping it in a pretty nice spot in class as well, 7th at the moment. So he's doing all the right things as Jesper, but he's now got a very shiny Audi and a very nice chrome looking Audi as well, I have to say, just in front of him. So how can he take advantage of this? Because for Hayden Gober, it's all gone a bit south over this last lap. He went from attacking to now having to defend for everything he's got.
Yes, indeed. And defending is where you start to lose your marbles if you don't keep your head about you, because a driver behind you wanting to attack, you need to be able to plan where you place the car. Oh, no. Big shame there for Gober. Oh, my goodness. And he's having a bit of trouble getting it going again as well. It's a very awkward place for the car to come to a stop. On board with him. Let's have a look at what happened. Looks like he just lost it under the brakes. A little bit of oversteer. Tried to correct it, but the car snapped back on him.
That is as like absolute cliche Audi as you'll ever see. The car, if if you don't trail brake the car properly, it can get so squirrely, so feisty on you. I think just there, it's bit its owner there, and Hayden Gober got the full wrath of it as the Audi just twitched its way off the circuit. And it's one of the dangers of this car, and unfortunately, he's dropped all the way down to 12th in class now. So that's a really big loss for Hayden. We know he's got good pace, so I'm sure he can make up a lot of places from there, but any hope of getting past Jack Anderdeck for that 5th spot in class, unfortunately that's all gone unless we get a late race safety car.
Yes, indeed, and that's always a possibility, especially considering how much close quarters racing we've gotten so far. Meanwhile, the battle for 9th and 10th, David Browning versus Eric Luke for GTD honours, top 10, both in Mercedes. And these guys have had a reasonably quiet one. They've been able to keep themselves in contention in that top 10 and having a lot of fun just cruising around Spa in those Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a lot more cruising going at the moment for your 10th place car of Eric Luke. He's got a fair bit more straight line speed than David Browning does at the moment in the Team Tortuga, a Mercedes AMG. So perhaps just different, rear wing settings or aero profiles on those cars, just allowing Eric Luke to get a bit more straight line speed. And looking at the Delta speed traps that I've got on one of my softwares, it was actually 2 kilometers an hour quicker was Eric Luke as Tyson Meyer goes for a very feisty move on Zach Plummer to get past that spot past the GTD traffic for Tyson Meyer. So he's making ground up, but he is losing time. But more importantly for Tyson Meyer, currently holds the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, well, Meyer, he's certainly shown that he can string a lap together. We only need to look at the opening round at Road America to see what kind of masterclass he can put on. So once he gets out there and in that clear air, watch out for him because he'll try his best to gain all that time back and then some. Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley, meanwhile, still battling as hard as ever for the lead of GTD. And Stanley, he hasn't been hugely aggressive with Lockwood, but he has been able to stay just within that draft range. Could be crucial when it comes to the pit stops. A little bit of fuel saved.
I'm a little bit surprised, though, that he's not actually gone for a move, because we did see how quick he was at the start of the race when he was in fresh air. But he's not really been able to capitalize on that at all. Brian Lockwood has well and truly kept him at bay and been able to match him. We did say earlier that Brian Lockwood hadn't done a single 2-minute 14. Well, he's now done 3 in the last 4 laps. So Brian has turned the pace up quite a fair bit, but Ferris Stanley, we've seen him down in the 14.7s in this race. He hasn't been able to do anything with that pace. So Ferris Stanley perhaps being held up a little bit, but fuel saving is definitely something he can be doing at the moment to help himself out in the pit stops, because after all, you get no prizes for leading lap 17, which the leaders are on at the moment, but you do get a prize for leading that one after that 90-minute mark.
Absolutely correct. And I've said this in many a broadcast, if you're trying to make a move for the lead, you want to try and do it at the last available opportunity, because if you do it too early, then it just leaves you open to attacks from your rivals if they have their wits about them. Andrzejek and Drlica once again for 5th and 6th, and as we take a look at this fight, which is certainly heating up, Drlica might go for a move into Pouon. Nope, he stays glued to the bumper. Bit of an update from race control as we take a look at that shapely rear bumper. Post-race review for Graham Quinn's incident on lap 2 for causing a collision. And side by side, as you do through Fanye, great move by Jesper Drlica. But will Andrzejek be able to hold on? No, he gets off into the gravel. Was that contact?
I believe it was just a little bit of side-by-side contact between the two there, and it was just enough to send the Mercedes AMG off the road. And, well, we'll see how that is viewed from this replay. Good chopper cam shot at the moment. You can just see just a little bit of a moving over there, and actually pretty heavy contact in the end. I don't think that's going to do any perhaps steering damage, but definitely aero damage on that number 131 car. Yeah,
certainly. And I mean, I don't necessarily blame Drlica for that, because he was getting on the throttle and taking the tightest line that I think he could while still getting back on the throttle. It'll be interesting to see what race control makes of that one. Marcus Deck and Graham Quinn continuing to fight meanwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marcus Deck just being able to build that margin just a little bit at the moment, but Graham Quinn just getting very aggressive. You can see the way he's positioning the car into some of these corners, just trying to fill the mirrors of that Porsche. And well, Marcus Deck isn't breaking away at all, so it's clearly working for Graham Quinn, who uses all the liberties of the AstroTurf on the exit there. But they do have to be careful if they do choose to fight, because over the last few laps, they have been steadily being closed in on by that number 6 BMW behind. Last time around, a 2:12.7 for Andrew Caron. Graham Quinn, 0.3 of a second slower.
Interesting. This is going to heat up in coming towards the middle of this race. In fact, we basically are at the midpoint of the race right now with just over 46 minutes to go. So these guys might be thinking about getting into the pits soon. I don't know if they'll try and split the strategy even or pit as late as they possibly can. I mean, pitting as late as you possibly can is often the favored strategy because there's less that you need to fill up the car with and less time spent in the pits. But you have to make sure that you manage your race in the first long section.
Well, absolutely. And we did just get confirmation by race control there with that little bit of contact we saw with Jesper Drilica, and no further action has been ruled on that, so I think that is a pretty good call in the end. But we did say earlier in the broadcast, didn't we, Reese, that there are so many different ways you can cut this race in terms of strategy with that half an hour fuel window. So we'll see how that does go. And what is going on here, Reese?
Oh, it's Tyson Meyer trying to make his way through on our GTD leaders, Bo. That was very awkward coming into Blanchimont. That could easily have gone south very fast.
Well, looks like everything has been able to stay relatively clean, which is good to see. And to give Brian Lockwood a little bit of breathing room with Ferris Stanley, but Ferris still well and truly in that slipstream. But of course, Brian Lockwood will have that slipstream of Tyson Meyer as well. So Tyson now free to resume his regular pace now in clean air. But I just think, going back to strategy, the amount of time he's lost in traffic has outweighed any possible gain of an early stop.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. We'll have to monitor Tyson Meyer as the race goes on, see if he can claw any of that back, but it's looking less and less likely now that he is past all of that GTD traffic. And you can actually see there the comparison briefly in terms of straight line speed between the classes. There's nothing in it between them.
No, and that's one of the interesting things with these multi-class events is, for the GTLM cars, they've really got to make all their passes on the brakes or mid-corner speed if they're feeling brave around the outside of a corner. But when it comes to straight line speed, unless they've got a very sizable slipstream and a headwind, there's not really many other ways to get past. So, especially when it does come to a strategy like Tyson Meyer, where you do have to pass quite a lot of cars, that is something you do have to think about. And I think that's why, as of right now, he's the only one to have not pitted, because they know it is very tricky to pass these GTD cars, especially when you consider that our pole sitter in GTD, Ferris Stanley, was just a second and a half slower than your last place GTLM car.
Yeah, and that says it all right there. Meanwhile, Graham Quinn and Marcus Deck, they have not let up on the pressure on each other, and Andrew Caron still lurking in the background there. Quite the interesting battle eventuating between these guys, and as we come towards the last half hour of this race commencing in the next 15 minutes, they will be looking at diving into the pits, and that is one of the places where it can be decided. Right there, you just saw the headlights turning off because iRacing has deemed the sun is high enough in the sky that we don't need them anymore.
Well, that disappoints me quite a bit, to be honest, but nonetheless, we'll see how it goes. As it's a lot brighter on track, so the drivers are adjusting their visibility now, of course. With that, no headlights, and obviously having the sun come up, everything is just changing. You get a lot more vision. You can perhaps see brake markers you couldn't see before, so it's quite a nice feeling as a driver when you do have that sun come up and out of nowhere, oh, I can see again. So they'll be enjoying that quite a lot, and Graham Quinn is definitely enjoying it. He continues to apply the blowtorch to the back of Marcus Deck's Porsche, but just not able to do anything with it, as Dan King officially becomes a retirement of this race as well. So a shame to see for Dan King, of course, one of the guys behind Geodesic Racing who helped bring you this championship, and what a championship it is. But for Graham Quinn at the moment, that Sim Racing Channel car is just a little bit too tough to pass, and Ferris Stanley, well, he's got a pretty similar feeling.
Yeah, that's it. It's always interesting battling at Spa because the current layout dates from the late 1970s, so it's not exactly a new track, but neither is it an old one either. It's definitely of that time period where there was a lot of focus placed on mid-speed corners and following the terrain and keeping the actual apex speed very high. Not many obvious overtaking opportunities around this place unless you know exactly how to work the circuit to your advantage.
And that's the thing, is this circuit is one of those tracks where you do have to sort of learn its characteristics, learn where the bumps are, where the cambers are, to really maximize making an overtaking opportunity happen, maximizing lap time. It does have a steep learning curve, does this circuit, and it's got steep elevation as well, so there's a lot to learn around Spa, and I think that's one of the reasons why it is a driver's favorite, because it's not, you know, bread and butter. It's not simple. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It is a challenge, and the drivers love that. That every lap they do around here, they know if they've done a good job or if they've messed something up.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, for people like me, it's often the latter more than the former. Meanwhile, the battle for the lead in GTD, Ferris Stanley closing up under brakes into the bus stop. Brian Lockwood, though, he is just the picture of calmness. Every time I've seen him involved in a battle, he has not lost his cool. He's just kept his head. He's been able to put his car exactly where it needs to be.
And when you're leading a race like this and you do have a slightly quicker driver and circumstances behind you, being calm is exactly what you need to do. And Brian Lockwood is just, you know, like you said, he's the absolute picture of calmness at the moment. And Ferris Stanley, who has so much pace, we saw that in qualifying with a 0.6 of a second margin, which is just absurdly quick, is not able to do anything about it. There's nowhere that, you know, Brian Lockwood is presenting opportunities. There's nowhere where he's, you know, perhaps inviting a pass to, you know, eventuate. He's just keeping the car on rails, hitting his marks, and that's going to pay off very nicely for him. The only question mark about Brian Lockwood right now is fuel in the pit stops, because Ferris Stanley, whilst he might not be making track position, he is shortening his pit stop time every lap he does behind Brian Lockwood's Mercedes.
Yep, by only a fraction of a second or so per lap, but it's going to help him. That's not going to help him. On the other hand, running wide through the no-name corner, he's lost all of that draft that he managed to get.
Yeah, just pushing a little bit wide. You can see it on the onboard here. Actually, the Audi, with how low you need to run it at the front to get maximum rotation, he's actually just bottomed out the splitter on the actual turn-in. So you'll see he goes all over this curb on the right-hand side, and it doesn't allow him to hook up the left-hander at all. So just drags the front of the car out. And for Ferris Stanley, well, he was saying hello to the AstroTurf.
Yes, and he might be saying hello to the pits as well if he can't jump up to the back of Brian Lockwood again. He's doing a good job of it, I have to say, so far. Gap closing lap by lap. Meanwhile, we're taking a look at our top runners in GTLM. Robert Harris still with over 10-second lead, and Marcus Deck and Graham Quinn have calmed down a little bit. They've given themselves a bit of space.
Yeah, the gap's still within a second between those two, but it's definitely a lot more spread out than it used to be, which is good news. And for Gabriel Ferreira, he's been setting some good lap times as well, but not quite able to match your front two leaders. He was 0.6 of a second slower last time around, which helps that margin go from 3.3 to 3.9. So for Gabriel Ferreira, he's just lurking in the background. No risk of losing third place, though. He's doing a great job in that respect. And fourth place is Zach Plummer and Jesper Drilica. But check out this battle for 6th and 7th, because Victor Tanaka, let's not forget, he has the newest tires of anyone in this GTD field. He's currently closing down, as Simon Avatal does apparently just lose a spot to Trevor Clement as well. So I'll go find that. And Simon Avatal just going way too deep there under brakes and was doing a little bit of sandpit playing.
Yeah, we'll get a building optimization systems replay of what happened there, and yeah, that's very awkward. You brake just a little bit too late, you want to turn in, you try your best, but the fronts just won't cooperate and you slide off into the gravel. So position lost for Avatal, but we know that he has the opportunity to get it back. Hayden Gober, meanwhile, into the pits. And Hayden was leading the incident point count, but he currently is in 4th place, equal with Marcus Deck on 16 incidents. Andrew Taylor is now the driver running with the least amount of incidents at 13.
Well, there you go. 13 incidents at Spa is not a bad effort at all. And Hayden Gober does come out of the pits now with a 21.8 second actual pit stop time. So compared to the others that have taken stops, that's relatively short compared to the likes of Victor Tanaka and John Miller. But of course, they probably took tyres as well, which could explain that gap, as Trevor Clement is making a pass. Well, he's not making a pass. He's getting past very easily because Andrew Caron has dived into the pits to become our second GTLM car to dive in.
Right, and this is probably going to be the cue for the rest of our GTLM field to start making their way in, because once you start that cycle, it's like dominoes falling. One guy pits and then everyone pits because they realize what's at stake and what they need to do to get to the finish. Simon Avital with a very good run there through the Eau Rouge complex, getting a good slipstream on the Ferrari in front of him. Having a little bit of a look, doing the old psych out maneuver that we talk about so much on this channel.
Yep, absolutely. And can he psych him out enough to force him into a mistake? Of course, Simon was the one making a mistake at this very corner last lap around. But this time he is all solid on the brakes and gets it rotated nicely. But Victor Tanaka also getting it rotated quite nicely on the brakes. He dives up the inside at La Source. And Jack Anderdeck actually gave him a fair bit of room there, probably more than he needed to. And that really allowed him to make that move stick. So a good job there by Tanaka, but the issue for him is the Camel Straight is coming. And I think there's going to be a bit of redemption coming for Jack Anderdeck. He's going to want to get in that slipstream and really get the run. But the issue is John Miller might just have the best run of them all just behind these two. And he is closing rapidly. And now Tanaka has to go defensive out to the outside. Goes John Miller almost 3 wide into Lecombs. Don't do it, boys. That would be a little bit sketchy to go do it anyway. A massive dive, and here comes contact. Bang into the side, and Tanaka goes around for the second time in this race. Jack Anderdeck with damage as well. And I'm sorry, I've got to put the blame there entirely on Jack. That was too optimistic. Yeah. Could not stop the car, and he's just gifted John Miller 2 free spots.
Yeah, that's a real shame. I mean, good on him for giving it a go, but I don't think giving it a go was the best thing to do in that situation. There was just no space there on the outside for Tanaka to alter his line with Miller there.
No, not at all, but we'll leave that up to the stewards as to what they wish to do, but very much that has benefited John Miller quite nicely, and it has hurt Jack Anderdeck pretty badly as well. So Victor Tanaka with big damage to his car as well, but so far no one else diving into the pits on this lap around. But worth noting that Tyson Meyer was the quickest GT-LM car last lap around, not by a huge margin, just a little margin over Rob L. Harris. But that strategy for Tyson with that early pit stop is paying off to a degree. It's just how much has he lost in traffic as he sets another quick lap time within 0.3 of his fastest.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what Meyer can do as we take a look at Avital. He's making his way there past the Ferrari of Trevor Clement. Nicely done into Lacombe, position swapped.
Yep, nice move there. Simon Avital gets that position back, which he lost at this very corner, running too wide, and hooks it up on this lap. And actually, it's the other way around. It's Trevor Clement going a little bit wide on this lap. So for Trevor, he wouldn't have wanted that, but he is just back to the position he was a couple of laps ago. So it's all up to whether Simon Avital can avoid mistakes for this last 33 minutes in this race and make something happen, as Jack Anderdeck does come into the pits after that incident on that lap. So he's trying to get some damage fixed, and there's another of our GTDs in the pits.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, we take a look at the GTD lead once again. Stanley versus Lockwood. Both of these guys still have yet to come into the pits, and I'd hazard a guess they might come in at the same time.
Well, if they did, that'd be extremely exciting viewing to see which of the two pit crews could come out of the pits quicker, whether it's the Racecraft engineering car or if it is the crew behind the Audi R8 in second place at the moment. So that'd be interesting to see, but I've got a feeling Ferris Stanley, with the amount he's been able to save behind this Mercedes, might be able to push it just another lap longer. And if he could do that, it could be beneficial, because it means that he doesn't have to be as conservative into pit entrance to avoid hitting Brian Lockwood. He can really attack pit entrance and maximize every millimeter of that pit lane.
Yes, indeed. We also got to think about potential undercuts as well. We talk about the undercut and the overcut quite a bit on Sim Speed, and it often is track dependent, car dependent, race dependent on whether an undercut or an overcut works. Graham Quinn coming to a stop in the pit lane. He is another one of those drivers putting his hands up and saying, yes, I cannot go on any longer. I need to get a refresh.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see where he comes out in review in respect to Tyson Meyer, who's actually just under the brakes in La Source and will get that move pretty easily. So I believe in the grand scheme of things, that does put Tyson Meyer provisionally in position number 3. So the only one I've got a question mark on is if he can come out in front of Marcus Deck, who, if he has to make that move stick. But meanwhile, our favorite GTLM battle raging on at the moment has swapped positions again, because Trevor Clement using that beautiful Ferrari 488 straight line speed to make the move stick in a Lecom, and now it's Simon Avatel who has all the work to do again.
Absolutely. These guys are just having a lot of fun swapping positions every couple of laps, aren't they? Ferrari versus Porsche, one of the oldest battles in sports car racing, and it's awesome to see it continue in the digital space. Tell you what, when it was first announced that both Ferrari and Porsche would be coming to iRacing, that was some of the best news that I think the sim racing community ever got, because traditionally Ferrari and Porsche were the domain of other racing entertainment products, and iRacing getting them was a big coup.
Absolutely, and you know, when you hear the names Porsche and Ferrari, you instantly think of those icons of sports car racing, those beautiful road cars they produce as well. They're just big manufacturers, and to have something like them in iRacing is just a fantastic draw card as well. And well, we can see just in the field spread, there's only a handful of BMWs. There's no Fords, but there are plenty of Porsche and Ferraris. As Simon Havertel gets very racy under brakes, and the different characteristics of the cars do really play out quite a lot. Havertel a lot better on the brakes. Trevor Clement a lot better in the pit lane at the moment, because he has dived in at the end of lap 25. So he has chosen now to come into the pits. Rob Harris and Marcus Deck continue to stay out, and I'm going to be interested to see where Tyson Meyer comes out in respect to them. We do expect Tyson to come out ahead of Trevor. There's a lot going on at the moment. Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley continuing their battle as they head towards Blanchimont Corner. I'm just noticing a little bit of damage on the front of the Audi R8 at the moment. Perhaps just hitting a curb a little bit too hard by the Audi R8. But when are these two going to pit? Because we are now over an hour into this race, so they can come in at any time they want, and they're not choosing lap 25, maybe 26.
They're both, I think they're both waiting for each other to make the move, because being able to have a lap out there on your own, I mean, it's probably not the best in terms of tire wear, because you're still making use of those tires. The guy who actually pits first may have the advantage, cooler tires and a little bit less time spent in the pits.
Well, absolutely, sir. And it's all going to be down to who spends the least amount of time in the pits here. But that's of course to a degree, because if Brian Lockwood, we expect Ferris Stanley to have a slightly shorter stop. If Brian Lockwood can stay within at least a second, he gets in the slipstream of the Audi, and this fight continues all the way to the 90th minute, which would be fantastic, and we'd love to see it. But for Ferris Stanley, right now he just has to save as much fuel as he can and just get the shortest pit stop possible when he eventually dives into the pits, which I'm going to say on air, I think he's going to pit at the end of this lap.
We will see how right you are, Bo. Meanwhile, Graham Quinn and Andrew Caron battling. Quinn has pitted, and Caron has as well. Caron with a slightly quicker pit time. There's our race leader in the pits, Robert Harris. I think we can expect our GTD leaders in, Bo. You might be proven right on this one, but Marcus Deck is going to take the overall race lead.
Yep, and we do have to factor in as well, something I've actually forgot just quickly. We did have that early race safety car as well, so they can potentially go a little bit longer than this hour mark. So I'm actually going to say I'm proven wrong just a couple of minutes later.
Okay.
I think they could actually go a little bit longer, because that safety car, depending on how aggressive they were saving under safety car, they could potentially go to around the hour 5 mark or so. So still potentially another lap or so in the tank for these cars. That's why we're seeing the GTLM cars going a bit longer as well. Robert Harris pitting after an hour and 1 minute, and Marcus Deck going around an hour 3 minutes as well. So that safety car has helped them out quite a lot. but I will see how it all pans out.
We certainly shall, and the prediction that you will be proven wrong, Bo, has been proven right. Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley both staying out of the pits for at least one more lap. Meanwhile, both of these guys have pitted, and it's just racing to the end for both of these guys. Andrew Caron and Graham Quinn for 6th place on track right now, and Caron with a slight bit of slipstream. Out comes the big boy on the outside of the Fezzer. Let's take a look at what he can do under brakes. Hold the outside, maybe. No, Graham Quinn cuts him off right in the middle of the corner.
And some flashing headlights to go with that as well. I'm not sure Andrew's going to be too happy about that one, but it was just very hard racing at that point, so I don't know how the stewards will view that one, but he's doing me very proud with the headlight flashing there at the moment. He's overdriving the car a bit. That is one thing you have to make sure when you get involved in an incident, is you don't overdrive the car, and he was sliding it quite a bit there through the long right-hander, so Andrew just has to be careful, but he has done a great job because, of course, before the pit stops, he was about 3 seconds behind Graham Quinn, so whether he's just done it through fuel saving or just raw pace, he has brought himself back into this battle.
Certainly has, and a good job from him to do that as well. Caron, of course, made his name in sim drifting, and is attempting to get himself into the actual racing side of things. Not going sideways as much now. Simon Avatal, meanwhile, coming into the pits from 3rd. Question is, when are these guys going to blink in GTD?
Well, I've already said my bet on when they were going to go, and I've got that completely wrong, so I'm going to put it down as anyone's guess, because they have been doing a great job to just save the fuel where they can and run their own lines. So they've been doing a really nice job to extend this first stint as much as they can, and we'll see what they can do as we see they go through the Blanchimont corner, just how quick it is in the GTD cars, and we'll see if they decide to dive in at the end of lap 27. Ladies and gentlemen, get your bets ready, because ladies and gentlemen, no one's coming in.
Okay, someone obviously lost money on that one, I think. Meanwhile, a quick building optimization systems replay of this battle. My goodness, side by side, Andrew Caron and Graham Quinn up to La Source, almost making side-by-side contact. You can tell that these guys, they are not giving an inch. They remember what happened at Silverstone. They remember.
You said there was nearly no space. I don't know about you, but I saw no space. That was
negative
incredible.
Space.
Exactly. There was nothing there. Just completely millimeter. And it's not changing too much through Lacombe as well, but it is Andrew Caron who gets the advantage this time. But if history serves anything right, it's going to be this battle is going to continue for quite a while longer. So some brilliant racing there. There was nothing between them down the front straight. I would have loved to have had a shot from the mirrors, just seeing how close they were to basically adjusting each other's mirrors for each other. So that was brilliant stuff to see, but Andrew Caron does have the advantage now and is skipping away ever so slightly from Graham Quinn. But we'll see if any of our race leaders decide to dive into the pits now, because 24 minutes to go. The race is coming to a close, which is a shame to see. It's been a fantastic race. And finally, Marcus Deck says enough is enough in GTLM. He dives into the pits, where the GTDs, we know they can go a little bit longer than the GTLM, so there's potentially another 3 laps in the tank for the GTDs.
Yeah, certainly. Justin Rem taking his Porsche in there, and oh no, Graham Quinn's had a spin. That is not going to help his chances at all. Fantastic battle with Andrew Caron, and unfortunately it's all come undone for Mr. Quinn. What happened to him here? Just caught the curb on the entry to Stavilo, and the rear end of the car came round. I hearken back to when you were talking, Bo, about how the tyre wear affects the mid-engine cars.
Yeah, absolutely, and we saw it. The car just lost it on entry, but I want to quickly talk about Tyson Meyer and Marcus Deck, because it's going to be pretty close between the two, but I think Tyson is just going to get this. So while the early pit stop didn't quite net him the race lead, it's net him a very nice second place and about a second margin over Marcus Deck. So for Marcus, well, he's got a bit of work to do, and he's now the freshest. He's just come out of the pits, being able to get a drink, and look at this. I'll let you take over for GTD.
I'm very sorry, Bo. That was an unintended reaction because I noticed Stanley almost rear-ending Brian Lockwood coming into the pits. That shows you just how hard these guys are pushing. Ferris Stanley trying to make up some extra time. There we go. Just slows it down in time. Excellent stuff. Well, that may make the difference for him in the stop.
No, absolutely. We'll see how they come out of the pits. We'll take a look at Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley first and second all race long, and Brian Lockwood away and goodbye. And I am very surprised about that, but equally happy because Ferris Stanley is still going to be in the slipstream. This battle will go down to the end.
Yeah, we can't forget Jesper Drulicka, he had already pitted. So
But probably
he's-
can't make it to the end though.
Yeah, that's the question. Will Drulicka be able to make it to the end? We're not quite sure. Our director's telling us even if he has to splash, he may have enough of a margin that he'd be able to jump them for the lead.
I don't know about that. It's an 11-second margin at the moment, and we're seeing the lane times being about 30 to 24 seconds. So it'd be very, very tight. But if he can get his head down, really focus, and if Brian Lockwood and Stanley battle, then there's every chance. So I'm just going to go back and do a little bit of math here and try and work it out. So the leaders on the first stint did 28 laps on a stint. Drulicka is currently 23 laps into his stint. There are 10 laps to go. I've got a feeling he's 5 laps short. So that's roughly what? 18 liters of fuel he has to take. That's maybe, let's say 7 seconds of fuel potentially, maybe a little bit less than that. But I think he's not quite going to be able to get himself into this battle for the win. But I would not rule him out for a podium at all.
I'll have to wait and see if the math checks out. Meanwhile, this battle we've been observing for the last 30 seconds between his teammate Zach Plummer, of course referring to Stanley there, and Gabriel Ferreira. This is a nice little battle that we've had going for a while. Again, it's Mercedes versus Audi, with the Audi behind and saving a bit of fuel.
It's literally the exact same battle for the race lead. It is a racecraft engineering car defending from an action sim sport Audi. This is literally the same battle. So we've got two for the price of one. It's just the names are different. So it's Plummer and Pereira. It's the battle of the P last names here, as it is Lockwood and Stanley at the front. So a very interesting battle going on, but it is the 101 car with the advantage at the moment. But the Audis, how strong have they been all race long? We know they've got very good pace, but what can Zach Plummer do? Is he able to do anything as we head to just under 10 laps to go?
Well, he's probably biding his time, mixed with trying to maximize every single corner. Love watching battles happen around Spa, because you can easily see where different drivers have pluses and minuses versus their competitors. Not quite the slipstream he would have wanted coming onto the Kemmel straight, but he will still be able to stay well within draft range, pulling up to him more towards the end of the straight. Not going to be a move for now, but Plummer keeping that pressure up on Pereira.
Yeah, he certainly is, and that's what he has to do. Just keep Pereira under pressure. Just make sure that there's no room for him to make any kind of error, and if he does make an error, the Plummer really goes for it and tries to take advantage of it and capitalize. But he's doing what he has to at the moment. You can see the different lines they run through that corner, with a Plummer taking a slightly tighter line and the car just bouncing a bit more, with the Audi being a bit more stiffly sprung, so it does actually want to bounce over the bumps a bit more, whereas the Mercedes, you have to set up very soft so it absorbs those bumps quite nicely. So very different strengths and weaknesses between these two cars being very nicely demonstrated. But at the moment, it is Gabriel Ferreira who has the advantage, but still 9.5 very long laps to go, as Brian Lockwood has done a brilliant job to actually jump Ferris Stanley by a fair margin now. The gap out to about 1.5 seconds between the two. So Brian Lockwood, we've seen how good he can be throughout this entire Geodesic GoPro championship so far, proving it once again when it really matters, when the points are boiled down to the final few minutes. He is the guy you want to have in your car.
Absolutely. Lockwood's just switched on out of the pits, and he's been setting fantastic sector times versus Stanley. since the beginning of their final stint. You can see the visual gap there. Stanley, he was pretty much on the bumper of Lockwood before they came into the pits, but now Lockwood's just out in front, racing to the end, pushing as hard as he can.
But Ferris Stanley last lap around, 0.3 of a second faster. This cannot be counted out. This will not go. That this will go down to the wire, I should say. I'm getting my words in a bit of a tongue twister there. But Brian Lockwood, he's a very good driver. He knows exactly how to win these races because he's done it before. But Ferris Stanley is driving on another level this round. I think he could still be the favourite if it comes down to a last lap shootout, as Gabriel Ferreira and Zach Plummer continue their battle, half a second between the two, and Plummer closing in that slipstream down the Camel Straight.
And what can he do in the middle sector of the circuit? Because that's where the Audi is at its strongest through these long flowing corners, making sure that he rides the curbs reasonably well. You can see he's already making up a gap on the Mercedes in front. Of course, the Mercedes with a huge V8 over the front axle as well. Something else, meanwhile, has happened to Graham Quinn. He's dropped a wheel off in the grass and vanished.
Well, let's get a building optimization systems replay up on screen, and they do.
That was the replay, though.
I don't know what I'm doing.
All good, man. All good. This battle here between these two Porsches certainly heating up, though, and a couple of the usual suspects that we've seen from earlier. It's Marcus Deck, and I believe that is Justin Rem in front of him.
Yeah, it certainly is. So we'll see how this battle pans out. It is a battle of the two Porsches at the moment. And Simon Avital with
Simon Avital, of course. My mistake again.
That's all right. We're 1-1 for the last minute of broadcasting race, but nonetheless, Simon Avital in the slipstream ducks out to the outside. And what can he do on the brakes? The answer is go very late, but can he get it into Lacombe? Side by side between himself and the 88 car on the inside, and it's going to get very tight. Root this right-hander, but again, just sticking the nose in there is Justin Rem. But the drive on the outside is absolutely brilliant there. By the Porsche. Contact has made a lockup as well for Justin Rem. It's getting very feisty, but the move has been made by Simon Avital. But unfortunately, just how many mistakes have we seen from him today? If the driver behind of Justin Rem can just keep the pressure on, there's every chance he can get that position back.
Absolutely, and you saw Avital coming into Bruxelles. He actually started moving over to the inside to cover him. So he knows what's at stake here. Meanwhile, our old friends, Pereira and Plummer, continuing to fight up the hill. What an excellent piece of racetrack that is. One of the most challenging in the world, one of the most dangerous in the world as well. And Plummer, he's starting to make some inroads on Pereira in front. You can see nearly vanishing behind the Mercedes down the Kemmel Straight.
Yep, absolutely. And both of these battles of the exact same cars are closing up because another 10th taken out of your race lead. Brian Lockwood to Ferris Stanley. It was another 10th, but this battle is the one to keep an eye on. Zach Plummer is just all that much closer at the moment, just keeping the pressure on from Gabriel Ferreira. But where can he make a move stick? Because we know the Mercedes is so good in a straight line speed. So the Kemmel Straight and Blanchimont are probably the two better opportunities, but it can be a struggle for that Audi to get alongside that Mercedes.
Absolutely. The Mercedes coming off the apexes of corners has traditionally been the best of iRacing's GTD spec cars. A lot of torque down low, so coming out of a hairpin, you want to be in a Mercedes. Meanwhile, Jesper Dreleka, currently in the lead of GTD. He stays out for another lap. We're not sure if he has to pit again and when. Meanwhile, John Miller currently running in second place. And he's actually having to... we'll have to wait and see what happens to him as well, because he pitted earlier as well, didn't he?
Yeah, they both pitted on the same lap, so they're both 26 laps into their stint at the moment. But with 7 laps to go, that's a big ask for them on a tank of fuel. I also just want to quickly give a shout out to Tyson Meyer, second in GTLM. Last lap around 0.7 of a second quicker than your race leader, Rob Harris. That is unreal pace by Tyson Meyer. And I've got to wonder, if he wasn't stuck in traffic, just how different this race could have looked.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Tyson Meyer, we've seen it from him so many times this season. He's just able to hook up that car and do an incredible run of quick lap times. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out for the best for him this time round. He's going to have to make his way past this Audi. Once again, that's Hayden Gober, who is currently running in second in terms of incident point count. An update on that, Mark File and Andrew Taylor are now tied on 19 incidents.
Yep, so 19 incidents around Spa, still a very good effort for 78 minutes of racing so far. There's still 12 long minutes to go for these guys at the moment, and they'll be battling very, very hard to make things happen. Just on your race lead, your effective race lead in GTD, another 1/10 of a second in the favor of Ferris Stanley, down into the 2:14s again, so he just continues to nip at the heels of Brian Lockwood in front as Gabriel Ferreira and Zach Plummer continue their battle through pull on at the moment. And you can see Plummer just losing a bit of ground at the moment. So he's just trying to hook it up, but struggles a little bit when he gets close. It's almost like that car is being affected pretty badly by the dirty air. And we did see that Ferris Stanley, when he was behind Brian Lockwood, struggled to stay behind or stay close for a lot of laps. I wonder if the way they've set that car up isn't allowing it to get close behind the car when that aero comes off the front.
Yeah, that is quite the interesting dilemma to have. Another dilemma for Simon Avital and Justin Rem is, can two go into one? Apparently, yes. Through Lacombe, they continue to run side by side. Excellent strategy there by Rem to hold the outside and then immediately go defensive for Bruxelles.
Yeah, that was a great move there, and you can see there that they're still continuing their fight, but it is Justin Rem that has the advantage at the moment, as John Miller, one of our GTDs who did pit under that safety car, has dived in, and you can see your two effective race leaders have came out a fair way ahead. So I'm expecting that to be the case with Jesper Drilica as well. In fact, Gabriel Ferreira is going to come out in front as well. John Miller actually losing a fair bit of ground from that pit stop, which actually surprises me. I thought he could have come out in effective position number 3 or 4, but not the case. He's going to come out just ahead of Victor Tanaka. But when does Jesper decide to come into the pits? We'd have to say it'd be in the next lap and a half at least. But for your race lead, we'll see how the lap times were last time around. 4/10 of a second. Ferris Stanley closing on Brian Lockwood. He's not just closing the gap now, he's rapidly chasing it down.
He absolutely is, but is he going to have enough time to draw up to the back of Harris? We're just gone under 10 minutes to go. A maximum of 4, maybe 5 laps here at Spa-Francorchamps with the length of this track. So Meyer is rapidly running out of opportunities to try and retake that race lead.
Well, he certainly is, but in GTD, it is definitely heating up for your race or your effective race lead, as now it is Ferris Stanley pretty much in long-range draft of the Mercedes, so it's getting close very quickly, and I think in the next 2 laps that Ferris Stanley could have an opportunity. Meanwhile, Simon Avital could have an opportunity a whole lot closer than in the next 3 laps.
Yeah, certainly. These guys absolutely turning it up once again through the same set of circumstances. We've seen them so many times before. What can Avital do versus Rem here on the Kemmel Straight? Defensive from Rem. I'm so glad I'm actually getting their names right this time. Side by side, what can Avital do? Round the outside. He's not able to maintain the momentum. Rem's going to come back at him here. Bit of traction, and he retakes the position just for a bit, but they're still side by side into Bruxelles. Who is going to win out? It is going to be Avital. Justin Rem almost gets into the back of him. Meanwhile...
Oh, you go, Reese.
I was just going to say, meanwhile, Jesper Drilica taking his pit stop. It's going to be close between these guys, but he is definitely going to come out behind our race leaders.
Yep, he certainly does, but look how close Ferris Stanley is. Last lap around, another 0.2 of a second. So in the last 3 laps, he's taken out 0.8 out of Brian Lockwood. So that is pretty much half the gap in the last 3 laps. So he's going to have 4 full laps roughly to try and find a way past, because he's in the slipstream at the moment. So he just needs to make sure that he closes up by the end of this lap, and then he'll have full advantage to try and pass that Racecraft Engineering 143 car for your GTD class win.
This is going to be fantastic. I don't think we've seen a battle this close for the GTD win in a while. I am relishing every moment of this, because have a look at how close Stanley is now through the middle sector of the circuit. This is where the Audi is at its strongest. You can see Lockwood just missing apexes by a few centimeters. He's starting to notice that Audi creeping up in his rear view mirrors. He's starting to get himself prepared for another of his defensive drives.
Yep, absolutely. And he's going to have one of the best defensive drives he's ever produced to keep that very fast Audi of Ferris Stanley behind. You can see just how much better the car wants to rotate through these long corners. And look at the margin he's closed on this lap alone.
Wow.
Of course, he is enabled by the draft as well, which does help quite considerably. But you have to say, Ferris Stanley just driving on another level at the moment. Absolutely fantastic. And he could potentially have an opportunity into the bus stop chicane. He's in the slipstream at the moment. But you did say earlier, you have to time your passes, because you can give an opportunity to the driver you're passing for the race lead to re-attack later on. So does Ferris Stanley go for it now, or does he wait? He's not as close as he would have liked to have been into the bus stop, so he'll have to wait for another lap. But if any opportunity presents itself, Ferris Stanley is not chasing anymore. He's battling.
He absolutely is, and I reckon the from up here, from where I am, the best place for him to make one of those moves would be into Lacombe, because then he'll be able to stretch that gap out through the sector where the Audi is the quicker car.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect plan, but can he pull it off? Because we know the straight line speed of that Mercedes is brutal, especially the torque that AMG has going up Rouge through Radeon as well. It's really going to help him, and that Audi could struggle a bit. The only advantage the Audi has is it having the slipstream and draft. He gets a decent run there, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough come the end of Lacombe. As you can see, just closing and closing, just the lights in the back of Brian Lockwood's mirror getting closer and just distracting him with every passing moment. Looks to the inside, but I don't think there's any opportunity there. The 173 has to wait with 3 laps to go.
Proper battle for the lead now. Absolutely love this. And you can see Stanley, he's getting a little bit more racy into the next sector of the circuit. What can Lockwood do through these fast turns in the middle of the track? All he can do is try and stay in front, because Stanley, he looks like he definitely has the advantage here.
Well, the issue for Ferris Stanley, I think, is he can't afford to get, doing too many fake dives or little looks up the inside. I think he has to just keep his cool and really try and make sure that he doesn't overdrive the car. As you can see, Simon Avatar just a lot of mistakes, whether he's got the braking performance of the car slightly wrong or something like that. It just hasn't been his day today. But for Ferris Stanley, I'm not sure you're going to be able to force Brian Lockwood into any kind of mistake. I think you've just got to try and make the move. He's not going to make a mistake. He knows what he's doing. He's been in this position 100 times before, but Ferris Stanley with a beautiful run. They're heading into this next little mini straight before Blanchimont and into the bus stop chicane. If he can get Blanchimont right, this could be the lap where the 173 gets past the 143, but it's all so tight with Blanchimont, and it's not enough. The AMG just so good, so balanced with that high-speed corner and into the bus stop where the Audi has the opportunity to make a pass. It's just not close enough. It's going to slide, and the AMG is under pressure now. Ferris Stanley in the slipstream. Is Lasource going to be an opportunity? He's going to look to the left, look to the right. Nothing can do, but Reese, the camel straight is up.
It certainly is, and we saw the kinds of runs that Ferris Stanley was getting down the Kemmel Straight. I'm optimistic that this could be a move for the lead of the race. Brian Lockwood, you got to remember, he has a bit of clear air in front of him. He has a bit more freedom on where to place his car. A little bit of aero push for Ferris Stanley coming up the hill. He's lost a bit of that run, but he's still in draft range. He'll be able to draw back up to the back of Lockwood, but no move, at least for now.
Yep, no move at least for now, but how much longer can Ferris Stanley wait behind the AMG? Of course, the longer he sits behind, the hotter the tires get, the hotter the engine gets, with the no air getting into the radiator of the front of the Audi R8 LMS. Is currently in second place, wants to make it first place, but the opportunity's not there. A bit of a slide on entrance as well. We saw his teammate have a bit of an issue earlier in the race at Campus Corner, just losing the Audi on turn, and Ferris Stanley almost became a victim of that as well. And now where the Audi is so strong,
it's given Brian Lockwood in the Mercedes the upper hand. So for Brian Lockwood, he's got to use this gap, keep the breathing room, get his composure, refocus, and regroup for what is going to be the longest 2.5 laps he has done for a very long time.
Absolutely, and that was the first real mistake I've seen Stanley make all race, so the tyres of that Audi are starting to cry out, no, help us, we have done all we can, but Stanley is saying, no, I must continue to attack Brian Lockwood, I must continue to attack for this win. He hasn't got much time to do it, and side by side, once again, is Rem and Avatal, and Avatal once again taking the position. How long is that going to last?
Well, I think Simon Avatal has the record in this race for the most amount of passes on a single car, which is pretty impressive. But nonetheless, he has to do it the hard way again. As you can see the battle once again. Hayden Gober there making a pass, I think that was on David Browning. So GTD is just spicing up at the moment. You can see David Browning and the Team Tortuga AMG lost that spot there, but Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley, this is definitely the headline act at the moment, the main match, the main pay-per-view, as you could say if it was a boxing ring, but it's not a boxing ring at the moment. It is very much Spa-Francorchamps. That is the battleground. It's a brilliant battle between the Mercedes and the Audi of Brian Lockwood and Ferris Stanley respectively. Can Ferris, who knows about the aero push on this lap, hook it up a little bit better? The answer is yes, he can, but that is a long way to go for the Audi if he wants to make a move, stick into Lacombe, and he's closing. He is closing quick. Another 10th gone, but the braking zone comes up quick, and Stanley has nothing he can do against the Mercedes. Brian Lockwood has to do that one more time. The issue is, can he pull it off? Because Ferris Stanley, if he can hook up this next section of corners, is going to be very close on the final lap.
Yeah, speaking of the final lap, that has just started for our overall race leader, Robert Harris, with, again, a massive lead over Tyson Meyer, who is continuing to try and make some inroads. Harris actually 2/10 faster than Meyer on the last one. Marcus Deck, meanwhile, running in P3. He has the lowest number of incidents in GTLM, so he's in with a shot at that $50 prize money.
Yep, he absolutely is. We'll have to wait for post-race confirmation, of course. In-race incident counts can be a little bit off, so we'll have to see what the official count is. But there is definitely a lot of drivers in a shot for the win at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see which of them are able to make anything happen. But Ferris Stanley and Brian Lockwood, that is the closest Stanley has been towards Blanchimont in a long, long time. He is within absolute closing distance, a striking distance of the Mercedes AMG. 0.2 of a second is the margin, but that is going to close down in the slipstream for the Audi R8. What can he do through Blanchimont, where the push will be very, very strong right behind the Mercedes? His closing is just not quite there, Reese.
No, and I don't think... Oh, he goes for a big lunge under the brakes, but not enough for him. Okay, this is going to be when they start their final lap, our GTD runners. So, this is the last chance for Ferris Stanley to make good on his pole position and take victory.
Yeah, absolutely. But Rob Harris at the moment running the final few corners, and what a race it has been for Rob Harris. He, of course, got the pole position by 0.3 of a second in GTLM qualifying. He did exactly what he had to do. The pressure was put on him at the start of the race, but can anybody stop him? Catch me if you can, says Rob Harris. He takes another victory in the Geodesic GoPro GT Championship. GTLM is all Rob Harris at the moment. A great win. Tyson Meyer, what a strategy. Second place for him. And it's going to be Marcus Deck in that gorgeous sim racing channel car, but he drove a pretty beautiful race today as well. Marcus Deck, a great podium, and one he'll be very, very happy with. But in GTD, Brian Lockwood continuing to hold off the pressure of Ferris Stanley. Reese, there's only half a track left. What can he do?
Not much, I think, because Lockwood seems to have it locked down to coming into Puhan. It seems just the gap is just not what it needs to be. And Blanchimont is going to be the critical corner here, because Stanley has been able to draft up to the back of Lockwood, yes, but once you get into Blanchimont, the aero push really starts to have an effect, and he cannot gain any more. And the run to the bus stop chicane is just a little too short to make it work. If he is going to go for a lunge, it's going to be the lunge of Ferris Stanley's life.
Well, it might have to be. We'll see what he can do. Of course, he's driving for Action Sim Sport, and he has provided plenty of action across this last 39 laps. But the 39th lap is not done yet. What can he possibly have in store for Brian Lockwood? Racecraft Esports, he's won plenty of races so far this season, but Spa is such a great round. He would love to add that to his list of race wins, but what can he do? The answer is the Audi is getting very, very close. We've seen him go late on the brakes. He dives for it at the last moment, but Brian Lockwood in the Mercedes AMG, he's driven the mental battle. He's driven a great race, and he did exactly what he needs to do.
Excellent.
He wasn't the quickest car, but Brian Lockwood takes yet another race win. And Ferris Stanley, and an applause to you two. What a race those two put on.
Yes, indeed. There's Pereira and Plummer coming to the line. Another close finish between a Mercedes and a Ferrari. How about Jesper Drulicka, though, getting third place by taking that early gamble in the pits. Excellent performance from him, but Lockwood holding on under pressure. An awesome race, and we will just confirm who has the least amount of incident points. It's going to be Mark File and Andrew Taylor tied in GTD. As we take a look at the unofficial results, Robert Harris, Tyson Meyer, Marcus Deck, your top three. Excellent performance from Marcus Deck. He's going to get $50 in prize money as well, thanks to our sponsors at Turn Racing Sim Wheels. He has the least amount of incidents in GTLM.
Well, absolutely, but we will wait for official confirmation. Of course, sometimes in-race incident counts can be a bit off. And I'm seeing in the YouTube chat, Brian Lockwood is being told 0 incidents.
What?
Brian Lockwood. So in-race incident points can be a bit off. Sometimes racer will wait for official confirmation.
My apologies.
But Brian Lockwood might have just driven the perfect race with second in qualifying, race win, and no incidents, but we will get your GTD results up on screen. Lockwood takes the win ahead of Ferris Stanley and Jesper Drulicka. The top three separated by just 4.4 seconds. Gabriel Ferreira, Zach Plummer, John Miller, Victor Tanaka, and Jack Anderdeck, your top 8, with Eric Luke and Mark File, your top 10. But we will wait for official confirmation, but Reese, that was a brilliant race.
It absolutely was. My apologies. I obviously was reading from the wrong timing sheet there. I can see now Lockwood with 0 incidents. So congratulations, guys. I mean, around a track like this, certainly it's one of those things that you have to keep at the forefront of your mind. And to pull it off like they have today, well, it was a fantastic race to be sure. Absolutely love the kinds of races that we get in this championship, and we're just waiting for our drivers to come in for interviews. And I think actually we will go on a quick break while we wait for the drivers to finish their celebrations and come in for an interview. But don't go away. You're watching the Geodesic GoPro Championship post-race coming up. My name's Reese Gardner, Bo Albert, calling the action fantastically alongside me. We'll see you very shortly.
iRacing, you wanted the best, you got them 4 abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
Gotta love this time of year. Only one can be champion. Let's go playoff racing. I said, hey, 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 there's no surrender. Yeah, we hear my battle
.40 of the best sim racers, $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Super Cup.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going in the outside, both of them! Maloney! Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up the wall! Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
You're watching the Geodesic GoPro Championship here on the iRacing Esports Network, presented by ourselves here at SimSpeed TV. We are post-race now, and my goodness, what an incredible race we had. Our race winner in GTLM, Robert Harris, joins us now. Robert, it was another great victory for you, but my goodness, it got pretty feisty up the front.
Yeah, the two restarts were really, we were really racing really close in there. Especially at the start. On the second restart, I just kind of ran Marcus off the road. That was my bad. I just want to apologize to him. But it was really, other than that, it was pretty clean racing up there. It was very intense, I'd say the least.
What was it like in terms of traffic? Because we do know that Spa can be split into 3 distinct sections, and there's only really one of them where you can pass the GTDs without having a bit of trouble.
Well, honestly, the traffic wasn't that bad, just because the length of the Spa is so long. We only lapped about half the GTD field, so the traffic really wasn't that bad, and the guys we did lap seemed pretty nice and got out of the way.
Well, it seems like that was the way of things up the front for you, Robert. But my goodness, the incident count prize certainly turned things up as well. And according to our readouts, you have taken the least amount of incidents in GTLM. So congratulations. Difficult to do around a track like this.
Thank you. I was middle of the race. I really wasn't pushing that much, just kind of keeping it on the track. But Tyson was definitely catching at the end, so I had to push a little bit at the end to maintain the gap. But other than that, I really wasn't pushing that hard during the race.
Well, other than that, it's another victory notched up for you, Mr. Harris, and certainly coming into Watkins Glen next week, your spirits must be high. Who would you like to give a shout out to?
I just want to shout out the Team Tortuga. They're always a good group of guys, and along with Geodesic for the league, and always you guys for putting on this broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert Harris of Team Tortuga, your GTLM race winner. Bo, now we move to our GTD winner, who once again is tasting the top step, though not without a fight. You're with Brian Lockwood.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a fight it was, Brian. You had to work for that one. It wasn't made easy. How was the race from your side?
Oh man, that was one of the toughest races of my career, if not the toughest. Not only did I have Ferris pressuring me every single lap of that race, keep me, any mistake I made, he would have been there. He was close enough to take advantage of it the entire race. And I was also trying to stay on track at Spa without getting any incidents. And oh man, I'm so happy I could pull it off, and so thankful for my team that made it possible.
Well, you did an absolutely fantastic job keeping it on the road because you walked away with no incident points, which inevitably gives you the prize for lowest incident points in GTD. Just how tricky was that? And in practice, were you actually practicing keeping that incident point limit down?
Oh, not at all. And that probably made it much harder. But I think we did run the 24 hours of Spa as a team, and I did run plenty of laps with a damaged car. So, trying to keep it on track, not pushing too hard. and I think that helped a lot today. You know, I was very comfortable with where the limit of the track was. The Merc wanted to go over the limit several times. I had to lift on exit of a couple corners and do some crazy stuff, but um, I got there in the end.
You absolutely did. And well, Spa was definitely very tricky. But next up is Watkins Glen, where the Mercedes is very, very strong typically. So there's a bit of pressure on you to perhaps get a bit more of a result, especially with the car being so good. How is Watkins Glen for you? And do you think you can back this result up with yet another race win?
Well, I sure hope so. I don't have all that many laps in at Watkins Glen in anything other than a Skippy, but I've always liked that track, and it's a very fun, flat, fast-flowing track. There's always some good action, so hopefully, I'm not entirely sure I'll be able to make that race, but if I can, looking forward to it and hoping to walk away with another win.
Well, there you go. Before I let you go, is there any sponsors or anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, just my team, Racecraft Esports, and a special shout out to Kane Halliburton, who was in the spotter stand doing fuel for the team, and also to Gabriel Ferreira, a new member of the team who did most of the work on the setup today, and it was a setup that really, I mean, it was perfect for what we needed. Got us to the end. It was fast. So special thanks to those guys. Thanks to everybody involved.
Well done once again, Brian Lockwood. That was, of course, another race win in GTD. Reese, I believe you've got yet another interview lined up.
Yes, indeed. And I'll make an educated guess based on the Discord username that I am talking to Marcus Deck. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. Marcus, welcome to the commentary box. First time we've had you in here this season. What a race it was for you. Obviously, this season has not gone very smoothly for you, but certainly a podium at Spa. You must be absolutely ecstatic.
I don't know. It's today I just pace. In the practice session, I was already fast, and the qualifying P2. I have no idea how I managed this lap, but yeah, the problem was in the race. I was a little bit off pace. That's why we had so much battling in the first few laps. But somehow I managed to stay P3. Tyson jumped me in the pits, but yeah, P3 is awesome.
It certainly was interesting battling out there as well. What was the traffic like from your perspective?
It was not too bad. Most of the traffic came after the pit stops, and yeah, because I have very big fuel problems. At the 20-minute mark, I realized I need a whole lap of fuel. So I think I was never on fuel lap 0 at this time, just 3 or 6. Tried to save a whole lap of fuel. Yeah, but the traffic was not too bad.
Well, it worked out very well for you with a P3 here at Spa. Watkins Glen is the next round. What are your thoughts going into that one? Are you looking to get yourself up there, up near the front again?
I would like to try to get up in the front again, but it depends on the setup. Yeah, on my daily mood. I live in Germany, so the races are pretty late for me,
Mm,
and it's a little bit bad. But I mean, it worked out today, so
certainly did.
maybe it works. Yeah, maybe it works for Watkins again.
Well, we shall see in a couple of weeks' time. Is there anyone you'd like to thank or give a shout out to before you go, Marcus?
Yeah, of course, my team Sim Racing channel, especially Gibbo for the setup. Yeah, mostly the team who supports me.
Thank you very much for joining us, Marcus Deck there of Sim Racing Channel P3 in GTLM. The next driver we're going to go to, our second last of the night, is a driver that just harassed Brian Lockwood relentlessly all race. Ferris Stanley, after getting pole position, you must be slightly disappointed with second place, but you had a really good race.
Yeah, that I think after that caution, when caution comes out, I know that it's between the result I'm gonna be bad. So yeah, it's a good lap though, I must say. But if that caution happen, I think maybe I will win the race. But yeah, I'm not quite disappointed. It's really fun race for me. So yeah, pretty fun.
It certainly was interesting for you in the Audi because we know how difficult that car is to get pace out of, especially around here with a lot of fast-flowing corners. Behind Lockwood, certainly the car it seemed pretty stable for you nonetheless.
Yeah, sometimes if I push it too hard, this car is really unstable, especially on the kicking, I think, and between on sector two, I think I save it a little bit, like contest a little bit. So I think yeah, I made car more stable, stable the cars. So, yeah.
Certainly, and once again, a fantastic battle for second for the lead there in GTD. What was it like battling with Brian Lockwood? Because you guys have gotten close to each other on occasion, but this is the first time we saw you guys properly battling each other.
Yeah, I think I believe I have pace with Brian Lockwood. We obviously have same pace in each round because at the last couple rounds I have bad luck, like taken out Marcus and Asos got some netcode between John. But I will believe that if Silverstone, if Brian appear on Silverstone, I think it'd be a really good battle too on first place. So I think I have no doubt we have same pace in each other.
Well, hopefully we can continue to see these excellent battles between you two at Watkins Glen. Who would you like to give thanks to, Ferris? Who gets it done for you?
First, yeah, I want to thank Hash Racing Design who make the skin for Action Team Sport. Also, thanks for the rest of team on Action Team Support, especially Zach and Hayden. Also, thank you for GoPro and Turn Racing for the sponsor this league, and also thank you for SimSpeed for this awesome podcast.
Thank you very much, Ferris Stanley, your second place man in GTD. Final driver interview of the night. We're going to end on a third place note. Jesper Drulicka, my goodness, man, you had an adventurous one. Pitted early under the safety car, had to pit again, but you still held on for a podium.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out really quite well. I'm honestly surprised how few GT3s pitted there. It gave me about like a 20-liter advantage going into the second pit stop, and I think it actually gained me time. But I was also pretty lucky on the restart after the safety car. A lot of people were just sleeping on the green there. But I mean, I'm just super glad we ended up with the podium. It all worked out nicely, and I couldn't have asked for much better.
Yeah, certainly worked out very well for you. Coming into this round, obviously there was the big challenge of the incident limit and the obvious way that this track works with off tracks. How much of your preparation were you putting into just making sure that you kept it between the lines?
Well, I mean, the mentality I went into it with was just, if I make a mistake, I'll give myself an off track. Otherwise, none are allowed. But I'd say Spa is probably my best track personally. It's one I have the most experience on. The first endurance race I did in iRacing was the Spa 24. So I think, I mean, I didn't really have to do much preparation for it. I put in so many laps here. I think that mentality is already ingrained into my brain. So I think experience just played out here for me, and I was able to come out with only 16x or so. But Brian, he only managed 0. I mean, that guy's just crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. I can't quite believe that myself. Well, Watkins Glen is coming up as the next round. Is that a track that you're a fan of?
I actually haven't driven it in the Mercedes GT3, but otherwise, I've always enjoyed Watkins, and it should be a good one to look forward to.
Certainly should be. Before we let you go, Mr. Drulicka, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone that put together the broadcast at SimSpeed. Thank you so much. Everyone who watched my stream at twitch.tv/Jesperoni. Everyone who watched Cork's stream, Cork as well. And and thank you especially to Geodesic for putting on this great league and offering these prizes for for regular guys just like us. It's good to see, and I'd like to thank my mom for giving birth to me.
Certainly, that's the most important of all. Thank you very much for joining us, Jesper Drilica, your third place man in GTD. Well, that brings to an end proceedings for tonight. Bo Albert has unfortunately had to step away, so we say goodbye to him. And I say goodbye to you. Of course, we do want to once again thank Geodesic Racing for putting this whole shebang on. We want to thank Turn Racing Sim Wheels for providing the $50 in prize money per class for the least incident amount. Fantastic initiative from those guys. And of course, big thanks to GoPro as well for sponsoring the league and providing the fantastic prize of a Hero 7 Black Edition and an action pack for the winning drivers at the end of the season. I'm Reese Gardner. On cameras has been Jay Kennedy, and in my ear telling us what's been going on. We thank you very much for watching, and we will see you at Watkins Glen. Thank you.
Fantastic. This is GT Racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going in the outside. Both of them. Maloney. Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him. Oh, my God. Oh, big crash. Oh, my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no.
That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh, my God.
No.